Here, do I get extra points? I mean,
That one over here. Hi guys. I'm Rob. Nice to meet you, Chris. Good talking. What's your name again? Andrew, okay. Both of you from Grandstand? Okay. Hey, Greg. How you doing, buddy? Oh, we don't know here. Oh, we don't
It is. I mean, how many years were my kids going to school here? I never came to a school board meeting unless my kid was presenting. I just, until you care, until it's something that's.
I turned it on.
Alrighty. We'll go ahead and get started again then.
I think it's
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call this Radford City Schools School Board Special Meeting. It is February 2nd, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Can I please have a moment of silence? All right. Would you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Ms. Boyd, would you like to lead us tonight? Oh, this one over here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Make the motion to approve the agenda.
Have a second?
Second.
All in
Mr. Murphy is here from Thompson and Litton, and he's joined by Chris and Andrew from Grandstand Design, and they're here to lead us in our discussion to talk about the Radford High School Stadium. And I would only ask that we allow him and Andrew and Chris to present to us and let them continue their presentations until the end. And he does have a slide at the very end where he's asking for questions from you all, and then we can hear from the public too. So it's a lengthy but very informational presentation. And Jack, I appreciate everything that you've done to put it together and guide us through this whole process too. So thank you. And Chris and Andrew, thank you for being here too. I know it's a long ways away from where you all are. So thank you.
Ready?
Yeah, I'll let you grab down at the bottom of ours. Point.
Getting better at this.
Should have it down by now.
If I don't walk away with this one again, I'll be fine. My mic on here, Stacy, we okay?
Stacy, can we hear?
Okay with the microphone?
Can you hear Jack say?
We're good? Microphone? Yes.
Still wait, I'm behind. Keep going, I'll do it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, well, as Mr. Graham introduced me, with me tonight are Andrew, with a difficult to pronounce last name, and Chris Howard with Grandstand Design. They traveled down here tonight to be here and help me with this presentation a little later. As was Mr. Graham stated, I have a lot of information here tonight, and I think it's appropriate, it's necessary. I hope what I present tonight will clear up a lot of confusion, a lot of misconceptions, review what the process has been to date, the decisions that have been made, share with you, everyone and those in the audience, some very forward photographs and evidence of what we were basing our decisions on, the decision or the information that was presented to the board for them to make their decisions. And then I have some new information, and that's the reason why Chris and Andrew are here tonight as well. So without further ado, I'll move us along here. First one, Brenda speak about tonight, okay? Along the way, so in case you're wondering if I'm going to get there yet, this is what I have. And as Mr. Graham pointed out, I have been able to pull together some additional costs for some cost comparison. So I'll cover that at the very end, right before questions. I just want to remind everybody it's very high level. I don't have a lot of information on some of the alternative costs right now, but some of it is from specific contractors who gave me that information. So moving right along. Let's start at the very beginning, okay, with the stadium and why we're all here tonight. Constructed in 67, designed 67, constructed 68, so it's 55 years old now. The seating on our combined home and visitors is about just under 4,800. That's based on today's current code. Okay, so the way it would be determined is the length of the row style seating divided by 18 inches, and then that's how many people you get. I know that there was discussions that it held a lot more at one time, and it probably did, back before there was any aluminum seats added, back before. All right. Back before we even had stairways going up in it. Okay, it was just one wide open area. So those areas that are used as stairs now were all considered to be seating areas. So that's what, if you ask the building official, that's what he would determine the seating is right now. 18 years later, in 1985, for whatever the reasons were, we've gone through a lot of information, old drawings, old paperwork, but two of the sections, and when I say sections, I mean from the bottom all the way up to the top, had been replaced. I don't know the condition of all those sections, but I do know it'd be very difficult to just replace one platform because kind of like shingles, they're built on top of each other and they rely on the previous one to support it. So two sections were replaced in '85. 6 years later, two more sections on the visitor side. A couple years later, two more there back on the home side. My understanding, it was in '92 with the help of Dan Clayton, who is a nationally recognized bleacher manufacturer, installer, and actually provided proposals here today. They're regular competitors of these gentlemen. Provided the seating that's currently there right now. We found paperwork and a price for another section, but wasn't really obvious where that was. And then significant amount of overall repairs were performed in 1994. So in that period, from '85 to almost '95, a 10-year period, quite a bit of work and rework and repairs took place. Since then, not so much. Obviously the press box was changed out there in early 2000s, 2004, and then in 2019 is when the new lighting was added to the stadium. We've said this, you've heard this for a long time, goes back to the needs assessment. While it was constructed under previous level codes, it falls pretty far short from what the building and ADA codes are today. My understanding, I think Mr. Coffey maybe took this photo, I'm not positive, but I think I saw on the boosters. No? Somebody said somewhere along the line that someone had a drone. I stole this off of the booster site because I thought it was a nice, relatively recent photo. It shows the field nicely groomed. You see the new lighting's in place, and obviously the stadium that everybody knows and come to love. I'd say it's the envy of virtually most schools in Southwest Virginia. It's certainly one of the nicest places. The field and playing surface itself is, I'd say, second to none here for natural turf across the state of Virginia. So it's a beautiful place, and I always enjoy going there. I've been there to watch my own children play there and perform there, and they're still doing that today. So a very nice place, but let's keep in mind it is 55 years old now, so it's going to age just like the rest of us. I'm a perfect example of that. So here's our visitor side. As I said, seating on this side is about 3,200 seats. You can see where the aisleways are right now. Some of the the reasons why it's not considered code compliant. And it's not, when people say ADA is not just about wheelchairs, okay? ADA is all sorts of disabilities and just being mobile and how you move around. It's not just about wheelchair accessibility. So obviously that's a difficult thing to get up to where the seating is, and then there are no designated wheelchair areas there. But from a building code standpoint, there's no railings to speak of. The stairways, there's no railings. There's no guardrails on the sides. The guardrails in the front are too low. They don't have any intermediate pieces, things along those lines. So there's a number of code things. But overall, the structure, particularly the frame of the structure, based on our recent analysis, is in really good shape. I mean, the brick, it really needs a good cleaning, and I'd say a lot of the joints could use some repointing. But the front wall, the concrete, there's no signs of stress fractures in that, and the frame of it is in pretty good shape. Looking at the visitor side, about 1,600 seats. There was an effort, you see there in the lower left there, right in front of the new light pole. It's like a small blocked off area for wheelchairs to sit. That there is an accessible walkway up to that, but while my belief is this was probably installed shortly after the ADA became federal law, somewhere after 1990, probably before 96, because looking at aerial photos, it's not in one, it is in the other. But I found no records for that. While it does meet accessibility on that side, it's not in the spirit of the ADA. ADA is supposed to provide seating throughout, that you're not isolated in one area. But similar issues there with regard to handrails and guardrails and just access to get into this, because the hillside in the rear there is pretty steep. Speaking of that access, you can see here it's probably almost a 10% slope getting up from this east entrance into the site. This also, I believe, is considered the handicap entrance to the site, because we've been bringing wheelchairs around the track and allowing them to sit on the track down on the north end of the home side. Obviously, Porta John's right there as well. You can just make out the, well, this will help. On the middle slide here, that's that access point to that cutout handicapped area. To the left is the incline. I believe that was asphalt at one time. It's really degraded quite a bit. When the lighting project was done, some stone was added in there overall, because it was eroded quite a bit and quite a bit of dirt. So not considered an accessible walkway right now, but that can be repaired. To the right is the upper level of the visitor seating area. Over on the other side, lower left-hand corner, you all know the ticket booth and main gate into the building from the parking lot, the student parking lot. Immediately to your right, upper right-hand corner, is where the concessions and toilet rooms are. I don't think I need to tell anybody, if you've ever been here, that those don't meet code, both in terms of their layout and number of fixtures, and even the access with the surface and the slopes, side slopes, that kind of thing. You then see on the upper left, there is, I believe it's probably the same vintage as the walkway to the handicap seating on the visitor side. You see a concrete ramp with appropriate landings and handrail. Given the time that was probably installed, that did meet the code at that point. There have been some modifications, but I think for the most part that's still in pretty good shape. But when you get to the top, once again, you see the portion that was paved, how that's eroded and degraded over time. There's a lot of changes in elevation throughout here. You see the former foundation there from the old lighting, the tripod lighting. Just very varied terrain, I guess, more than anything is what I'd say about that. So those are the kinds of things that we've pointed out from both a building code and accessibility standpoint. The lastly then is the press box. As I said, the new press box, I think it was 2004 that was installed. At one time, the former lighting went right up through the rear there. You can see the foundation on the right photo from that. It came right up through the roof overhang. That's since been replaced. Recently, the cameras have been installed on the front of the press box there, and I know both under that overhang when weather's a little bad and all along that fence line is pretty popular for a lot of fans to stand and watch games and what's going on, as well as a lot of socialization takes place up there at that part of the stadium. So all in all, I think everybody knows it well. It's been a great stadium, continues to be, and there's no better place for it. There's no better place to be on a Friday night. So it's a great place. It really is. So, sorry, I forgot about this one. And this is just highlighting again some of the code issues, but also the brick walls that kind of sandwich and hold the stadium together, and then the concrete wall in the front. Again, structurally in very good condition. Saw no stress fractures. The brickwork, you can see quite a bit of mold and mildew growth on both sides. I do recommend that be cleaned, and there is a number of joints that would need to be cleaned out and repointed. But again, structurally it seems fine. You can see the guardrails in the front. They're too low. They don't have any subdivisions in them. No rails in the stairways. Certainly a stair such as that does not come close to meeting any kind of code as well. So won't belabor that point. So here's where everything started for us. So back in September, Mr. Graham notified us, could we go over, take an engineer, take a look at the stadium. There's been reports that there's some holes in the stadium. That was pretty much all we got. So we did go over the stadium. I believe it was the next morning. Both the engineer and architect were there. We discovered the holes. It wasn't too difficult. They were as big as 4 inches in some areas. It was noticeable the amount of patches throughout were beginning to fail. Some cracking, pieces had fallen out. You could see where there was areas where mesh had been added years ago, I believe, to help hold the patches in place. Now totally exposed and probably contributing to some of the degradation because they hold water now instead of letting it go out. But our review of what we saw that first day was that there was no imminent structure failure. We felt it was still safe to use. Now, there's plenty of tripping hazards and there's lots of other issues that we were concerned about, and we did talk about that. But our initial review was that the condition of these, the rises and runs, the precast planks were really reaching the end of their serviceable, useful life. We brought a contractor out with us to take a look at it also. His opinion immediately was it would cost you more to try to repair all these things than I could probably just put a 2-inch topping on this whole thing and we'd be done with it. And we're like, well, we have no idea what it can hold. Can it hold an additional 2 inches of concrete over that whole thing is a very heavy load. So we looked for drawings, none were available. We decided that we were going to, with the help of this contractor, go in and remove a section. We cut away a piece, and I have some pictures of that I'll show. But let me just review with everybody the condition of the stadium. Now, I want to put you in the right perspective here, because I've been going to this stadium now for 20 years. And when I go to the stadium, the lights are on, there's things going on in the field, there's lots of people, I'm coming out, I'm looking for my seat, who do I know who's on the field, I'm looking out, I'm looking down a little bit, that's it. When I leave, I stand up, everybody's leaving at the same time, so I was very surprised at the condition of this stadium when we went out there in the morning one day with nobody else out there, okay? And I think a lot of people would be if they personally went out there and took a look at how things have degraded. So I realize it's a great place, but it's hurting right now. So this is just one area, and it's made up of these precast L's. So the flat part where you put your feet, and then it turns up, and then that's one L, and then there's a combination of these in each section. And the aluminum bleachers were added to this many years later. But you can see here, this is just the front surface of one of the L's, and it's just totally degraded. You know, the concrete is sloughing off everywhere. There's stone everywhere, and this isn't an isolated case. This is everywhere, and I have plenty. Not everywhere. It's in many places, and particularly in our stair and aisleways. Our concern is, one, obviously the debris is a tripping hazard, but where that is degrading, it's bearing on that piece there. That's what's supporting it. So there's only about 4 inches that's being supported on the front edges, and then end to end there's about 6 inches, and I'll show you some pictures of that. Here's the 4-inch hole that we went to look at. This is what the concern was, and that is probably 15, 16 inches long in this direction, and as wide as point, about like that. You can see some of the mesh where there was patches that were made previously, and you know, these are now 30 plus years old, these patches. But because it's worn through and the mesh is exposed, it's holding water there now and just contributing or accelerating some of the degradation. Again, if you look across here, these are all different places. You can see the erosion of the concrete planks. This is a different place from the other photo. This is the left photo here is when we cut out about a 2 foot by 6 foot section, 3 feet on each side. What we really wanted to figure out is the piece that's holding these, that goes from top to bottom. If you think of your own stairs, we call them stringers that are supporting your stairs. What it was made of and what condition was it in. If all these joints were open up like this and allowing water in, what was the condition of these stringers? They're located, and this center photo is an example where the ends of these precast pieces join all the way up. So you see that joint going all the way up through there. The seats actually break there too on purpose because they're going to move a little differently, so you don't want to keep those connected. That's why that joint is respected all the way up through in the aluminum seating. But you can see in the right photo that is the stringer below. It's about 14 inches wide and 19 inches deep. But that's what is bearing, that's holding 25 feet in one direction, 25 feet in the other direction. There's about 6.5 inches of bearing there. You see the joint in the middle of that photo. So to the right, the vertical part, to the right, that's one of the newer sections that was put in back in the mid-80s. Okay, in that time period. To the left, that's one of the original ones, and you can see the patches that are there and that it's already broken and the crack going up through there. This is the point where we use the term bearing. That's where it's supporting. Okay, so think of if you got a broken finger, and you put a splint on it to hold it, it's still not as strong as if it was one piece. So we have these patches there right now. And that condition is in many places. So this is underneath these photos on the upper left and lower left were taken underneath, and this is just to illustrate that while one of these planks is not going to fall in, if it were to fall in, it's not going to drop 20 feet. There's grade immediately below it. The home side, for the most part, is constructed on a natural forming hill. One end was cut a little bit, and the other end was just a little bit of fill. Visitor side, a lot of fill over there, and we have located drawings since then, and it's a much different type of foundation system on the visitor side. But we wanted to make sure that where these holes were, that there wasn't evidence of water infiltration that was eroding underneath and eroding the foundations. Did not appear to be any evidence of that. We were able to see the connection points of the planks. They're actually designed to be welded on one side of the plank's welded and the other side's just lying there, so it's able to move not unlike, say, a bridge design. And then on the other end, it's, you know, the same kind of thing. So it's connected on one end, free to move on the other. And that's what we witness here when we cut this open. We did determine the dashed lines there represent the various, what we're calling stringers. I learned another term today from a concrete provider. They call them raker beams. But this is what we determined. That's one of our sketches there. What is holding it up right now? We wanted to see, could this piece support putting a 2-inch topping on everything? So as we continued into our research on all this, well, you'll see where it brought us. But I think all in all, it confirmed our opinion that structurally there was no imminent failure that was looming. But it's in poor condition, and something within, as soon as possible, within a year or two, needs to be done. And this is a good example here too. So that's our structural engineer. That's the vertical section. The vertical section is probably the primary supporting portion. Think of it as a beam at each one of these precast pieces. And that's where there was a patch. And you recall there's only 6 inches of bearing, and look how much is broken off there. Okay. This piece, when he went there, this was the piece that was cut off. He picked it up, and right in the middle of that, and this is, you know, break anything here, but I got to point at this. This is almost like a hinge. This just snapped off right across, okay, when he picked it up. So you can see rebar coming through there that's holding it together. But once the rebar, the reinforcing, is exposed and it starts to rust, that again accelerates degradation, because the rusting process, it's pushing out and it further breaks down the concrete. So these are major concerns for us. Then this is an area of the original, to the best of our knowledge, because there are some minor differences in the forming of the precast. But if you see these, it's a little hard to see in this photo, but these 3, 4, 6 sections through here, it almost looks like we're getting a sag here. I think it's more of an optical illusion. I think we do have a straight line. It's just that it's peeling off. The top layer of the precast is peeling off. And you can just see there's a lot of little stress fissures throughout this portion. All of this is degraded across the front. And again, those are bearing points from the L. It's sitting on this L all the way along there. So that's a concerning area too. And then finally the stairs, which are where everybody's coming and going, right? And when there's a lot of people, there's no handrails, we're not looking down. You can see entire sections there are just sloughing off the front. So that's why we have concern. We found this drawing yesterday, and I've gone back in and put additional notation on it, but where you see the hatched areas, those are the sections that have been replaced. So that 2 slides ago where I showed the whole section 6 in a row, that clouded area in the upper left is where that is. The clouded area in the middle there between 9 and 10, that's where we cut the hole. And you can see, I showed you how one side of the hole was a new plank and one side was the old. You can see it's right, those were all replaced there. So those are the 7, the best we can tell, the 7 areas that that have been replaced back between 85 and 93. Out of a total 294 planks that comprise the whole stadium, a third of them were replaced back then. So 2/3 are 55 years old, and the others are, 30 to 38 years old. So again, showing some age. These were the findings that we had, and that we've put in a formal letter report to Mr. Graham. And this is what I talked about in our November 9th meeting with the board. what our conditions were, what our findings were. You can read these for yourselves. But again, we said there's no imminent structural failure. And we felt something needed to be done soon. There's 3 options I presented: repairing, going with an aluminum bleacher system, or a new precast system. And at that meeting I said, we don't recommend the repairs at all. It'd be very costly. As the contractor indicated to us, it'd be cheaper for him to do other things than that. And they're not going to hold up. I mean, think of anything that you've tried to repair. If you try to glue something, if the surface isn't perfectly clean and good, it's just not going to hold. And that's the situation we have with so much of the sloughed off edges. It'd be difficult to get it to hold for any period of time. So that's what we had recommended. The question then posed to us was, well, what can we do and how quickly can we do it? Can it be done so it's complete in time for the fall football season, 2023? So, we were going in all sorts of directions trying to figure out. We were talking to contractors, talking to various bleacher companies. We had many come out to the site, look at it, doing some high-level cost estimating, square foot cost, that sort of thing, not knowing everything about what was there. We were concerned about, as we all experience here with the McCarg project, the impact of the post-COVID, well, pre-COVID, now post-COVID, but there's still a lag with regard to lead times and labor shortages and that kind of thing. So, and we've seen it. We heard it from the bleacher manufacturers. They told us, if you told us to start today, it'll be anywhere between 150 and 180 days before I can get it on the site. So doing the math, there's 6 months. So we determined a schedule that, well, if we were able to get somebody on board, get them on contract by February 1st, it's got to be completely designed. They could do that in about a month. It's proprietary designs by these bleacher companies. It's design build. They do their own design and structure for the bleachers themselves. We were working backwards and then forward again, and we played it out. And if you recall, in both the November and the January meeting, I had indicated that while it's doable, we need to have a contingency plan come the end of August. Either we try to reschedule games, we move them later in the season, or you consider a different location, that kind of thing. Nobody wanted to hear it. I didn't want to say it, but I've learned enough that I'm certainly not going to guarantee somebody else's schedule in this construction climate. So it was incumbent upon me to basically warn everybody of that. So we were looking at all sorts of ways to phase this, do parts of it, a lot of things. We needed to get the building official involved. We were concerned, since there's been a formal inquiry, we reviewed, we created a report. What's the liability to the school district in terms of this if we just don't do anything, those kinds of things. So there are a lot of things are being considered. This was that high-level cost estimate. I presented this both in November and in January. And again, what I said back then, I've since learned more, that there is a greater disparity here, but that they were close to being the same cost. The one would be extremely faster to go, but the two unknowns in both of these were whether or not we needed to remove what was there and what that was going to cost, and the time frame to remove it, the demolition of the precast only. All of these thoughts and plans and designs always considered to retain the perimeter of the existing stadium. This was going to be an infill project. The brick walls, the cast in place concrete wall in the front, the area in the back, the press box, none of that was going to change. This was going to fit inside of that, okay? That's been the plan. So either the precast comes out and new goes back in there, whether it can go back in with the same supporting structure or not, we didn't know. But the bleacher systems, with everyone we talked to, yes, we've done similar installations. We can put this inside that stadium with those constraints. Now, the big question was, how were they going to do it? Were they going to build it on top of what's there right now? Could they build it on the existing stringers? Did they have to remove the precast anyway? We spoke to 3 different folks, and all of them gave us different answers. Okay, and they weren't sure. They were going to have to design it, see what the loads were, so forth. So we went from there after the board said we weighed the benefits of the aluminum versus the concrete, the time frame. I'd say in my summation, the thing that won the day was the longevity and durability of an aluminum system, and that the aluminum systems were not the typical what you see at a rec field baseball park. You know, they don't have the open vertical pieces. People aren't dropping purses and trash and falling off the back. They're very different systems. And I referenced the Radford baseball field stadium, which is about 10, 12 years old now. And it's a self-contained system. It's an integral floor. It's got drainage built into it. You don't see anything through there. And they built that on top of the existing structure, if you know what that looked like. And I have some images of that. And just pure coincidence, Chris's company did that project. So that was the direction we went in. So we're going to pursue a aluminum bleacher retrofit, infill perhaps would be a better word. And this, I presented this in January, this slide, word for word, how we were going to go about doing this. Now, let me take a second to explain why we went this RFP process. They are all telling us they could be done a different way, okay? All 3 of these companies are have cooperative agreements. So that means if the school wanted to, it's not unlike furniture being on state contract. You need a new chair, you can just go buy it because you have a predetermined price. Well, they all have that. So I could have gone, or the school could have gone to just any one of these and said, all right, let's roll with this. At the time, we've been speaking with Dan Clayton. They put the other seats in. They're, again, pretty well-known bleacher company. Or we could have designed a system. It would have taken us a couple months to go through it. We would have had to do very specific geotechnical engineering, foundation engineering, all that. It would have put us at the end of April before we could bid it. And then you got another 30 days, 6 weeks before we can get a bid and get it under contract. So then we just lost that whole summer time frame. So the scenario that we proposed, and I think it's really worked out well, was to request a proposal. So it's not a hard bid. And I'm going to reiterate that. It's not a hard bid. The school does not have a contract with anybody right now to do this, including I don't have a contract to do anything on this. But this way, we could get them to look at it, spend their time. They all came out, they researched it. They gave us 3 different proposals, and they varied pretty widely in costs, and they all had a different foundation system, okay? So that's one reason why I think this was beneficial to go this route. We got their thoughts, their ideas, and to help us make a decision. So that's why we went through. It was an RFP. It was very general in its requirements to allow them the latitude to design their system. We gave them some constraints of, we want that you can work on it between May 30th and September 1st. We want this size aluminum extrusion. You got to work within these constraints that are here, and we're looking for this number of seats, those kinds of things. Otherwise, it was sort of up to them to tell us what would work best with their products. So that was the basis of that. And then our thought was, while that's going on, if we get someone under contract, then we can design the accessory things, the new walkways, if they're going to be necessary to get up to it, those sort of things. And then we could bid that and have that work take place during the summer through, say, a job order contract, something like that's been going on around campus here. So it was all schedule driven. It was how do we get the most information as quickly as we can, and the plan all along is, can we get this done by February 2023? I'm sorry, by fall 2023. I reviewed this with everyone. This is what was in that RFP. This is what we asked them to provide to us. That's what we got. We received their proposals just Thursday, 5 days ago. Everybody provided that information. We included in there, here's the time frame that you have to install this in. And then, again, we received these last week. First one was from Outdoor Aluminum. Again, a lot of these companies, and Chris's company is one of them, they work with other, there's designers and design builders and then the manufacturers, and they represent different companies. But this particular one's from Outdoor Aluminum. I believe they're Texas-based, is that right? Alabama. That's the price they gave us, okay? Dan Clayton, who we were originally talking with, they gave us this price. If you recall, when I had that high-level estimate, Dan Clayton gave us a cost per square foot of $90 a square foot. So they looked at the design, they put it together. Well, look, it's almost $110 a square foot. So until you actually have something for somebody to bid on, you know, an estimate's an estimate. And then finally was the one from Chris's company here, and you know, very competitive. But you know, was the best thing about this proposal is that the top two required all the precast to be removed. They're not, the first one wanted it out of the way completely. I'm sorry, Outdoor Aluminum foundation system was proposing 12 by 12 spread footings for all their columns, so they needed everything out of the way to do it. Dan Clayton's design required everything out of the way, including the stringers, because it interfered with their structure overall. So the cost to remove there and the time is not reflected in those top two bids. The bottom one, Chris's proposal, is one that has very limited demolition required in the stadium. It's similar to the hole we cut. There'd be several of those cut everywhere. That debris would be removed, the rest could stay there. If you remember, I asked if there was any objections if we were able to leave that there and not pay the cost of removing it, and that's pretty much the design that Chris's company proposed. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of information. Anybody have any questions up to this part before I get into their proposal and explain the details of that? I'm gonna take a drink of water too.
I have one. How much is the cost of taking the first two bids? What's added on to that? You said the price wasn't for demolition.
Well, it would vary because one required only the precast and the other one wanted everything out. I'm going to say, based on numbers I received today, between $150,000 and $175,000 to take that out and dispose of it. And I do have that itemized a little later when I'm trying to show some comparisons between the two. So this is kind of a quick summary of the proposal from Grandstand Design. As I said, it was the most comprehensive overall. It was retaining a good portion of the precast that's there and what is being removed. That cost is in their proposal number. Remember, it's not a hard bid. We're still talking to them about some modifications perhaps. So we can do that because it's an RFP, not an invitation to bid. They're under a cooperative agreement, that sort of thing. So again, it's the best of several worlds. They would include the removal of the existing seat planks and recycling those. They itemize that cost. You know, it's figured into it, but it's about $8,000 worth of savings just to recycle the aluminum that's there right now. The type of foundations they're called caissons. They basically going to drill holes. They're about anywhere from 30-inch diameter, from 10 to 12 feet deep, and they work primarily on the friction of the sides. They don't necessarily depend on what they're going to bear on. It's not a typical, it probably is more so for bleachers, but for example, the Montgomery County Courthouse, because of the soils in that area, that whole courthouse is constructed on caissons. Added some cost to the project, but it's a way to deal with unsuitable and unknowing subsurface conditions. Again, installing this within the perimeter of the existing stadium. Brick walls stay, concrete wall in the front stays. It's constructed on top of what's there. However, in order to install it on top, it's got to be a little higher. And they got to be able to get underneath it to assemble it. And we got to be able to inspect it in the future, that sort of thing. But it also has an integral drainage system at each one of these joints that collects any rainwater from it, and we would deposit that into the existing drains that are there in the front of the existing stadium. Their seating numbers, a little bit less than what I calculated you having right now, and the number one reason why is because it's the code. Okay, so there's one additional stair aisleway. The spacing on the rows are different. That's one of the issues right now, is that your rows are too long between aisleways. So we need to get one more in there and change that spacing overall. So I want to say it's about 700 seats less, but that also now includes integrated handicap seating within the stands on both sides. This was the schedule they provided. It kind of was contingent upon if they were able to enter into a contract this week that they could begin their design. So within 4 weeks, we would approve their design drawings, and then they could get it ordered. There's that 180 days from March 1st, somewhere in that neighborhood. These other things can all take place while that's being fabricated up until it arrives on site. The site's ready, the foundations are in place, they're loading it off the truck, putting it in place. It's about 6 weeks total assembly to put this in once the foundations are there. So that part goes relatively quickly. However, that's when I said, you know, if this is the end of September, we got a game the last week of August. Is there any way we can improve on this schedule, or is there any other phasing options that we could look at to make this happen? And we spent a lot of time speaking with Grandstand about that, but I think this is a good time for me to take a break and let Chris tell you a little bit about his company and more of the details of what they proposed on, what those systems are really like. It's not your grandfather's baseball bleacher anymore. It's a very different kind of product. And I'll be quiet here, Chris. Careful with this thing.
Sure. Push that arrow to move it. Okay, very good. Very good. Good evening,
Good evening.
ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for coming.
Jack, thank you very much for a very detailed analysis. I hope you all know that a lot of effort has been put forth into this analysis of your existing facility. And what I can tell you just briefly about myself is that yesterday was my 27th anniversary in this field. And so this is what I've chosen to do. I am a licensed, bonded, insured design build contractor that chooses to focus on stadium seating systems for high schools, colleges, some smaller professional sports organizations, that type of thing. My company, Grandstand Design Enterprises, will be 20 years old this coming May. I founded that in May 2003. And I've had the pleasure my whole 27 years of working with Southern Bleacher Company, a company founded in 1946 based out of Graham, Texas. And they are recognized as the largest bleacher / pre-engineered seating. The official term for bleachers is pre-engineered seating systems and that type of thing. And what I can say is that in my 27 years in this field, and having played football myself in high school and college, one of the things that I absolutely love about my job is when I get the opportunity to work at a facility that is surrounded by so much community pride and community love. Okay, that is a responsibility that my colleague Andrew and I do not take lightly. We love football. I played myself at the high school I played in McKeesport, Pennsylvania. I went to McKeesport High School, graduated there in 1988. I know I don't look it, but that's what I did. Sainted facility there. Weigel Stadium. Duke Weigel was an icon of Western Pennsylvania football, and our stadium was named after him. And so it was a seat, a place to gather on Friday nights. In these times with inflation going crazy, it's something the family can still do for a fairly reasonable cost. We get that. We understand that. And it was our look at the condition of the existing precast and just the general feel of the stadium that led me in the direction I took for the design, okay, which is to preserve as much. When you do a renovation at a county seat, at a facility that has so much history and so much passion in the community for it, you've got to do things that preserve the original character. The big example I can think of is my office is right up the street from Navy Marine Stadium in Annapolis. We're based out of Annapolis, Maryland. Starting in 2003 all the way through to just a couple years ago, I've done 9 renovations in Navy Marine Stadium. Now, you want to talk about a group that is passionate about their facility. I mean, they're up there with the most, okay? And they're very tough customers. And I'm very proud to say that I've worked with them on several occasions and one of their preferred contractors. But anyway, the desire to keep the sides and keep the front is what led me in the direction that I went to talk about. This is just a photo of what one system looks like completely finished. Actually, right there is, I also had the pleasure of working with James Madison on their upper level stadium addition. Now, a fun fact about this job is that was originally designed as a precast concrete. That whole structure was designed as precast concrete. And they opted to go with a pre-engineered system instead, mostly for what Jack had said earlier about the durability is unmatched. It's unmatched. Aluminum and RG60 hot dip galvanized steel, 80 to 100 year life cycle in this particular climate. Now, we can't say that over on the coast or in down in the bayou in super, humid climates. But in this particular climate, inland, 80 to 100 years before you see any type of great degradation that unfortunately you're experiencing with the concrete at Radford. So I often refer to this, frankly, as this is the largest display that I have in the country. When people say, do you have any samples or a display we can look at? I said, yeah, drive down I-81 South and just look to the right as soon as you go through James Madison, and you see that right there. Now, this past summer, we had the pleasure of working for University of Maryland, Baltimore campus in Catonsville. Very similar, very, very similar project to what I'm proposing for you guys. And knowing that the importance of aesthetic, and just another sidebar, I view my function as coming tonight as a means to clear up confusion. This has been my chosen profession for 27 years, okay? I'm never working with anybody on the other side of the fence that has done it as long as I had, that knows it. So, I mean, I'm here to clear up confusion because there's generally a lot of confusion about these particular types of projects, what's going into them, my process and my approach. And that's my function here tonight, to not brag on myself or talk about myself, but to answer questions and to clear up confusion so everybody has a clear understanding of what it is that we are proposing. But this is, while not exact, I'd say this is a pretty good representation of what your stands will look like from the side with our overbuild, with our overbuild on top. Okay, I know your wall is red, but that's a pretty good. And we're not going to have any stairs out front because of the configuration of your stand. But just the view from the side is pretty good. We chose this slide because I felt like that was a good representation of what we propose to do for you. So again, wanting to keep the wall out front and the wall on the sides. When we came out and looked at it, we were thinking, well, and I don't understand where the other two guys were going with. I don't understand how they could effectively how a company could effectively demolish the entire precast system without damaging the press box on the home side and leaving the side walls and front wall intact. I kind of want to make sure, just I mean, just for, and I'd want to know for sure that those companies understood that with that number. But this picture right here is Radford University when it was in, that's a before picture right there, so you can see the concrete stand built in. And this is what we did there. It's a slightly different foundation, but the principle is the same. We cut out portions of the concrete stand, and we poured our foundation system in there. Now, they weren't concerned about sides or front like you guys are, but I have to say, I think my approach is the best because my approach preserves all those things and keeps the demolition, you know, focused to a spot where we really need it to make room for our foundation. But that gives you an idea. Not that any of you will go crawling around underneath the thing when it's done, but I mean, that gives you an idea of what it would look like underneath. Okay, and that is the finished product at Radford, aerial view and side elevation. I mean, just very clean, very neat. They wanted to do stadium chairs, which is an option with our system. We don't have that. We don't have that figured for you guys because we wanted to maximize the number of seats that we could give with the ADA considerations and all the code upgrades. So that's, but that's just right down the street from you here in Radford.
I add one thing to that too, is that similar to Radford Stadium, with the constraints, we have a fixed top portion, right, where we access it and fix at the bottom. And this is the same.
Correct.
They matched, it's a smooth transition at the top, and then obviously a smooth transition at the bottom there too. So again, it was kind of an infill.
Correct.
With given elevations.
If I remember correctly, I think we had to re-pour that concourse up top. We had to, we did have to elevate that slightly, but I mean, it was all done within, it was all done, yeah, within a couple inches, yeah. So, let me apologize for the crudeness of these sketches. We really wanted to meet your deadline to get the RFP in, and you know, recognizing that truth be told, the design process, none of the real design process starts until after an order, but I can tell you with certainty that this is a very, very good idea of what the finished product would be like. So our system, 324 feet wide. That shows the approximate locations of all of the piers, and we're coming up with 2,918 seats. The top there, where you see, excuse me, this right here represents handicap ramps, and these two little squiggly things on the end represent stairs. Code says for that capacity, you have to have at least 4 widely separated means of egress. We achieve that here. Also, talk about a fun gathering spot. We have a walkway, a rear walkway all the way back here, which also is a code requirement when you have a stand that is accessed from the rear. So in a traditional stand built on a flat site, you have a wide front walkway where everybody comes in from the front and goes up. In your case, everybody comes in from the back and goes down. So it's just the opposite. We have a walkway back here. We have our handicap spots, and that walkway takes into account the location of your beautiful press box and wraps around. And we paid very close attention to the elevation of this, and the elevation of your windows in the press box, so that no sight line from the press box is blocked. You could have people hanging out back here having a party, hundreds of people hanging out back there. They're not going to block little. No?
Our principal says no thank you.
You could. I didn't say you had to. I said you could, and you would not block any view from the press box. All right. So this is a side elevation here, and again, I apologize for the crudeness of the sketch, but this gives you some idea of the elevation of our structure above the existing precast. This is all sketched to scale. And I'm going to stand by these dimensions. We have another colored slide to show you in a minute that will show you the elevation difference between structure and the wall, so you'll see what that is. But in the back here, the rear walkway is going to be elevated approximately 4 feet above your existing concrete concourse back there. Okay, so that's where that is, and that is because the rake of your stand. I matched the rake of your stand with the rake of the the new stringer, that's what that's called. And just how we had to set the foundations, that's where we landed up there, roughly 4 feet above. Okay, so what the benefit of that is, though, is you have a much better sight line than the concourse right now. If you're standing on the concourse right now, you're basically 4 feet under where you will be on my system, and you'll have an even better sight line of all the action on the field from back there. Sorry, I keep thinking I can move that from up there.
The Promethean board in here.
This sketch just details a quick cutout around the press box, and I want to call out this dimension, 7 foot 1.5 inches to the sill of the window. So, I mean, unless you got a couple of NBA ball players back, walking around there, you'll still have a great sight line from the existing press box. And there, right there. Jack, thanks for cleaning that sketch up. I appreciate that. So this will show you the view in cartoonish form, so sort of what you'll expect to see when you stand at the side of the new overbuild and look. Your existing wall right here, the existing facade, and I have considered a closure that will come down and rest on top of your existing wall, so you'll see the closure and your wall, and then a black vinyl chain link fence from the side, and the new stand.
You put similar closure on the rear too, so.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
At no point you'll be able to see underneath. So
Yes.
you can see open structure.
There's a closure. I'm going to run a metal closure across the back, so there's no exposed structure, so there's no way for anyone to get underneath. I mean, we'll have an access panel in there that'll be locked, but other than that, I mean, there will be all blocked off. Nobody will be able to see anything underneath there. Now, the $64,000 question, and the number one thing that I run into with a renovation project is confusion over actual field use. Okay? I'm very impressed with y'all's press box. You guys have a great press box. And the beautiful thing about your facility, and the first thing that I want to mention, is that one idea is to build in a phase. In other words, start the home side and work the home side as best we can. Now, I want to be clear. You can use the field. With the press box in operation, you can use the press box. All the fans would be on the visitor side. Now, capacity, for capacity's sake, and the way your visitor side is built, temporary bleachers, if necessary, could be brought in and built on top of that concourse back there, back off the concourse so you have the walkway. But that could boost up capacity for a temporary situation until the home side is complete. You can use your press box, you can use your field. We work in this type of scenario all the time and have for years. We understand while it will be something that is under construction, we clean it up. Friday night game, Friday afternoon is all cleanup. Friday during the day is all cleanup. It's just like making it, it's still a construction site. It's going to be blocked off for safety purposes and stuff like that. Nobody will be able to get in or get on it, so something's going on, but it won't be unsightly, and you can still have your games. You can still use your press box. Believe me, if you can't use your press box, you can't have a game. So you can use your press box. You can use the other side of the field. This is just one idea, not written in stone.
Concessions and precedent would still be available too.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. So everything of your facility, I really want to clear that up, and I really want to make sure that everybody understands that. I am by no way in anything we're doing saying you have to close your stadium, you have to move my senior year in high school was one of the best years of my life playing football. I cannot imagine what it would have been like having to play that season outside of my home facility. I can't imagine it. I mean, and I would say, in option two, legitimately option two, wait till the end, we could start, go to contract now, lock all the pricing now. 6 months to fabricate, I mean, that is what it is. Schedule everything to show up after the last football game. And if you guys make the playoffs and got more, we're flexible. I mean, it's like, we got flexibility here. That's option 2. But in option 1, I would say we would finish the home side, and I'm confident that we could, if we went that route, based on our current lead times, we could deliver the home side complete prior to the end of September. Football season runs, if you don't make, I'm sure you guys make the playoffs every year, but football season runs till the end of October. So you could still play a full October schedule with a brand new home side. And if you wanted us to wait until the end of the year to do the visitor side, that's fine. We could just move everything over to the visitor side, start the visitor side, and then, I mean, the capacity of your home side is a good bit larger than the visitor side, so you might not need to do temporaries to just have everybody on the home side. That would be the follow-up of option 1. And then option 2 is we just wait. Yes, sir.
One, this one. You didn't touch on the very first one, and we had had that discussion.
Oh.
You can go ahead and.
Okay, I apologize. I'm sorry. So right now, I mean, the official tagline coming out of Texas is it takes from the day that we turn in an approved shop drawing set, which is the engineer sealed drawings, the design drawings that take a month to produce. Their official line is 180 days. I think I can get it in 150, 30 days off, okay? There's ways that you might think of Texas as being 1,250 miles away. When I told them about this project and what you guys were interested in receiving an RFP for, they're very interested. They're very, very interested, and I can use that interest to my advantage sometimes. And I think we could knock it down to 150. Another thing that I've seen happen in my time, there could be a job in the queue now that has some complication, has some issue that pops up, and they have to pull it out of the queue. The sooner we can get in there and we can get release the fabrication. It's like the same scenario, whether you want the home side to be done prior to football season or prior to the end of September, or you want to wait till the end of the season to do the whole thing. It's a matter of getting the design started now, which takes an order, and then we can schedule it as that decision can honestly be made later. It could be made, yes, because it doesn't change my upfront process, and it doesn't add time or take away time from what I do. It's all the same. The sooner I start, the sooner material can be out there, and that's the expedite. And as far as Southern makes no commitments on expedited delivery until we get something into fabrication and they look and see, oh, wait a minute. Bristol, Tennessee, they got some code issue where they told us to halt. We need to pull that. We can pull that out. What do we fill it with? It can work to my advantage sometimes with them. So that's the expedited condition.
And we even discussed the possibility of would it be paid more if people to work overtime. Okay. Let me say something about that. I've approached Southern Bleacher about that on more than one occasion because that does come up. And I agree with their position on this. They have no problem taking somebody that's got an issue and pulling them out of the queue and then putting somebody else in. They don't think it's fair, ethical to take a 50% down payment for the purpose of jumping somebody ahead in line, because that's just going to delay somebody else. So that's not. But where it does help is on my end with overtime. Okay, my guys do not mind working
well into the night if we got lights on the field and can turn the lights on, and if the neighbors don't mind, we don't mind. We'll stay there as long as possible each day. And that knocks time off the installation. That knocks time off the installation end. That's me. We work out some more, some overtime rates for that kind of thing to knock the installation time frame down. Maybe from 4 weeks to like 2.5 weeks with like a super amount of time. It's those things like that I do control that would make a difference.
So really, the bottom line there's a lot of options from a scheduling standpoint. Everything from what was just outlined to not doing any of them and just waiting until football season's over. Still go ahead, complete the design. I haven't really thought it through all the way what it means in terms of this accessory areas and things like that, whether that could get taken care of during the summer or not. But obviously, if we delay the start in November, that also means the start of the drilling the piers and that sort of thing. So the whole thing would go into the spring, but be finished before the spring track and field soccer season. So those options are there, and as Chris pointed out, it's not any additional costs right now, as long as these are the only things we're talking about.
If I may, the aluminum and steel market, because it's commodities, it's all over the place. With your particular project, I was able to catch it at a real lull. And my inside sales guy, who is not supposed to do that, he's not supposed to bid a job off of like the lowest price on a particular day. He's supposed to pick one in the middle. Well, that helped us out a lot too. But I can't hold that price indefinitely. And I have to lock it pretty soon, as a matter of fact. Now, like I said, once I lock it with them, whether we rush, nose to the grindstone rush to get something done by mid to late September, or whether we wait until the end of the season and start, it's the same. I need to lock the price. I need to lock the price because the steel and aluminum is by far the largest component of my number, and I need to lock that. So, does anybody have any questions? And anybody have any questions for me about anything that I said? I said a lot, and I apologize for that.
Let me wrap up here with a couple of things, and then
Probably will after the presentation.
In just a moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very
Thank
much.
you.
So we have a number of potential recommendations, and a lot of it is dependent upon what you decide to do, what direction you want to go in. I think the phasing end of it does not need to be decided right now, unless you're confident about something. As Chris said, as long as if a decision is made to go with the infill system, we would want to do that in a timely fashion to retain the pricing that's been presented, because we still, again, those aren't actual bids, those aren't hard bids. We're still working with his company we're talking about getting a stair added at the bottom that would go off on the side. Those kinds, some tweaks here and there to make sure that we get what everybody's looking for. But it's hard to decide what else to do and what to recommend until we know what the pleasure of the board is if we continue going in that.
That's a common component of design build world. In design build world, you save a lot of time off of what he said earlier, hiring his firm to do the whole complete design, send the design out to bid. After it bids, and I win it, I usually do, I then have to go through the whole design process again, because we're never going to fabricate even if I work with them on the outset, we're never going to fabricate anything off of what he did. We have to do our own thing. So this is the most efficient, and the thing about design build, what I'll show you in a minute, there's always a contingency put in to try to anticipate some of the changes that are going to happen as you go through design build, so that it's covered.
That's right. So if there's a plan of using the existing, particularly the home side, and I don't know if I said it before or not, but the visitor side is substantially better condition than the home side. That's why one of the suggestions was let everybody sit in the visitor side for the first couple games, and if need be, we can put removable rental bleachers on the track. But if the decision is, no matter what the decision is, but if you're going to use the home side, we got to do some temporary fixes to it, okay? Met with a building official out there. He was in agreement with these things. He was willing, knowing that there's a process being undertaken, he agreed that we needed to patch particularly the steps. When you saw the condition of those, all the loose debris needs to be cleaned up from one end to the other, all the way through. There's gravels and dust and cement and leaves and all sorts of things. I know every spring it gets cleaned up pretty well, but all that needs to be cleaned out. Some repairs need to be made to the nosings of those stairs in particular, and then they all need to have a safety paint stripe added to them to help separate, visually from the step below, whether it's a thick black line or a safety yellow paint, that sort of thing. That needs to be added. We need to patch some of the obvious holes. The discussions with Chris was that instead of spending too much money on some of these patches that aren't going to last very long anyway, let's just cordon off some sections that are worse than others. We can rope them off and just keep people out of those altogether. And I can think of maybe 3 or 4 of those areas right now. Obviously, the one where we had cut the hole in before, and there's some rope there now. We want to do that. And then obviously just signage as much as we can to warn people to make sure, watch your step wherever you're going. We just, from a liability standpoint, you just got to take that extra step. Otherwise, it can be done. A next step is we need to do some further geotechnical exploration. We're pretty confident in their design at this higher level based on the geotechnical study that we did when the lighting was done. We had 4 borings done at all those poles there at the tops of the hills where we have a generally good idea of the strata there and what its bearing capacity is. But they need to have specific information exactly where they're putting their borings. So we have a proposal in hand from Schnabel, who's in Blacksburg. We're going to cut some holes through the existing, we're going to drill them through it and then do some 10-foot deep hand augers right where the footings are proposed to be. So we need to get some of that data. That can happen next week if we want. But that's some of the preliminary design work that's going to need to be done. Otherwise, determining exactly what our scope's going to be for a contract, if you choose to go that way, then we need to look further into the design work on the accessory areas, the ramps and the new walkways and that kind of thing up through there. Discussion with the building official, he did not feel that we needed to extend that accessibility all the way to the restrooms yet until we're ready to undertake those. But because you give access to them, but then they're not accessible, right? So he was willing to forego that until the actual restrooms were undertaken. The other thing I'd recommend is the brick walls, that they do be cleaned and we repoint those, and we can clean those up and make them look close to what they look like 55 years ago. Or I was unable to find when the brick walls were installed. I don't know if anybody knows that. I don't believe they were original to the stadium, but haven't been able to find it. I found on the original stadium drawings a space for them to sit on, but not for the brick themselves. So I'm not sure how old they are.
Jack, can I just add something to what you said real quick? I just want to sidebar about the condition of your crew cast. I understand it was put in 1960, and the first renovation was done to in 1985. I can tell you from looking at a lot of precast stands, I don't know. I have never seen one deteriorate to the point that yours is at the age that it is. I would have guessed, just based on looking at it, it was at least 20 to 30 years older than what it actually is. And when Jack presented me with the information saying that the first renovation to it, to repair precast, was in 1985 after it was only 17 years old, that's unheard of. I mean, precast is supposed to last, it's supposed to last usually upwards of 25 years before you have to do anything. And even then, you need to fit. So I was really surprised, and I could say it's a unique thing that I've seen in 27 years to see a precast stand that young deteriorate to that point.
It is unusual. I wonder why the home side is in the condition it is compared to the other, whether it's the direction of the weather or the leeward winds or it's holding water differently. It definitely an accelerated aging there.
That's why I suggested starting on the home side and moving to the visitor, because you don't have to do anything to the visitor side to make it safe. If you wanted to keep using the home side, like you said, you'd have to put more money into the repair. In my opinion, that's putting good money after that. That's my opinion.
Yeah, so that's something to consider in the phasing, okay? If we don't use the home side, we don't have to spend money to do these interim repairs that are going to be covered up, right? So whether that cost can be applied to some additional rental bleachers is something to think about in the phasing. None of these things are going to be done immediately. They wouldn't be undertaken until the summertime. So we got plenty of time to decide what the actual phase is going to be. But keep that in mind. So if we were able to somehow work off the visitor side for those first few games, you're saving the money of those interim fixes on the home side. I know it's not ideal, but just something to think about. I need to preface this next slide because I've tried to compare apples to apples between replacing what's there now in kind with the system that Chris has proposed and what we know are pretty firm costs. But I will tell you, I got some numbers specifically from contractors. Some of them were still not as clear a picture, and others were, we just had to put some figures on it. So some contingencies are included to cover that. So these are the kinds of things that we had to take into consideration for replacing what's there right now, okay? So what we've learned is that that precast L, it was made specifically for this job 55 years ago. Company in Roanoke, I forget what the original name was, then it was Phoenix Construction Concrete. They've gone out of business 20 years ago or so. As far as we know, and people who are in the business, those forms may be around somewhere, but they don't know where. What's been proposed is a new precast form based on a form that's available, okay? And instead of a single tread, it makes 3 of them at one time. Now, that has a lot of advantages in that there's fewer joints, there's less handling, and it goes in a lot faster, right? You got a crane there anyway, instead of going 1, 2, 3, you got 3 right in there. Plus, they like to make them longer than 25 feet. 25 is like short by the industry standard. So again, it would go in a lot faster. So that's the gentleman that we were speaking with was proposing that sort of system over the other. If he also told me if we needed it to be the 1 foot or the 1 section L's, that it costs almost $300,000 to make one of these forms, okay? Because typically they're doing it and they're making it along the order of magnitude of like 500 plus of these things at a time. So this is a small job by their standards. So I think all in all, it works out well with what they're proposing. It's probably saving, it may not be saving a whole lot in the material cost, but it's saving a lot in installation and I think longevity too, because there's fewer joints. So that's one route that we've gone with it. Now, the other thing though is that system needs a different type of supporting structure. It doesn't need as many as that are there now. It needs half as many, but the stringers that we exposed would need to be replaced. So that means I need to take into account removal, retain the entire perimeter that's there just the way it is. That's the elevation, the walks at the top, the track, the concrete wall, the brick walls, press box, and we remove all that. To your point, I am concerned that, you know, we got to be careful. The crane's picking these things up and moving all around, can knock a wall over, right? So it's a tedious process. It doesn't happen real overnight, okay? There's a time element to it is what I'm trying to convey. We have to pull all the aluminum seating off. Whether or not that could be reused, that's a decision for you to make. I can tell you it can't all be reused because we're going to have new aisles added and the lengths are all going to be different now. So we're going to have to cut down. And so how reusable, I don't know. I figured into my cost you'll see here, it's just replacing them. You know, we need to go back. Chris's system is totally code compliant. It's got handrails, guardrails, the right stairs, the accessories, everything that's there. We need to add that then. We have to add stairs, okay? The precast was there now, originally never had the stairs. Okay, so those stairs, those concrete sections, intermediate sections, were added after the fact. There's 200 of them in a new scenario with the new aisleways. There'd be more with the current one because there's more, there's less now because there's fewer aisles. So those are the kinds of things that go into account in pricing this thing. So one of the guys we talked to said, actually it was a Dan Clayton rep, he said, you know, our preliminary estimate is you have 500 tons worth of material to be removed. It's a lot, so it's costly to remove it and pay for its disposal. And again, to do that, there's going to be a big crane out there on the track removing it, and flatbeds. Presumably, we're thinking they could take them out in whole, set them on flatbeds, put a couple of them on a flatbed at a time, and then they go out. We also learned that there is a nearby disposal place in Plum Creek, which is good. You know, it's nearby. Don't have to truck it very far. So all these things went into this next, again, high-level estimate. So on the left-hand side is the aluminum infill bleacher system, okay? And I'll go down through the side here. And the top item is the actual in-hand proposal that we have from Chris's company, just under $1.5 million. My guess is with a couple little things we talked about adding, that's going to go up a little bit. But when you look to the corresponding right side, that number on the top is what we got today for these three tread 50-foot sections. Roughly 1.46 there. Again, they're high level, similar to the numbers I presented before. Until they actually bid something, they are estimates. We need to put new foundations in, those rakes that we talked about to support this new 3-tread system that are on 50-foot centers. The price that I got today for the demolition and disposal was right about $150,000. New concrete stairs, $200 a piece. You know, you got to build a formwork for each one. The material itself, you know, probably half of that when you get it all there, and then obviously the labor for it. And then new aluminum seats, all the railings, all the guardrails, the stairs, that kind of thing. That I don't have a firm price on that, but I can tell you it's in his bid. Okay. Same with the Cats in Place foundation, the raker beams, those two with the double asterisks. That's kind of our internal feeling at T&L, but I don't have a backup number to support that. Same costs for proposed sidewalks and accessibility up to both sides. You'll notice the contingency on the left side is 10%. We need to maintain some to accommodate some of these little changes. But I feel very good about this number because we have a proposal already, right? Fees and geotech work, all that's the same on both sides at 10%. The contingency on the other side, I made it 15%. there's still too many unknowns as far as I'm concerned. We don't have some harder numbers over there. But it's, that 5% contingency difference is not huge in my mind. So if you were to compare one system, the infill system, to what's there right now, retaining the perimeter, to replacing all that precast, that's our best guess we can give you today. And that was a lot of information, I know it. But I'm finished.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you both so much.
Can you back up to the last slide?
I'll provide copies of the whole presentation to everybody.
Thank you.
That would be good.
Terry has it already.
Tendency so much higher. I
Well,
mean, I understand the math why, but why is
Yeah.
it 15% versus 10? With those numbers, that's
because,
quite a bit of money.
well, it's a 5% difference. It says clearly what it is. 10% I'm comfortable with because, you know, what, 80% of the cost is known for the most part already, right? We have a proposal that says what is going to be done. So the unknowns, there's not many of them. Over here, as I said, at least two of these line items, I don't have hard backup for it, okay? The two, these two with the asterisks, I don't have a backup for that. And I don't have a backup for this yet. Trying to put this together in a short period of time. But I do have, you know, from contractors giving me these other, for the demolition. This is the thing I was most concerned about in our discussions early on, particularly in terms of the time it was going to take. It's actually less than I thought it was going to be. I figured that was going to be at least $200,000 to take all that out of there. It's the magnitude of the undertaking, the size of the crane, and the number of trucks, and you know, you can only take so much at a time. And I'm concerned about just the, you know, taking care of the surrounding while that's going on. So I said this with the McCart project. I hate to go under 10% on anything. We had to go in it with a small one, and it turned out it wasn't enough. So at this level, this high contingency, I mean, you can drop it down to 10 if you want and see what the difference is, but it, you know, it's 5% of the whole thing. And I'd much rather not have you make a decision on a lower number, have it come in higher, and you tell me, well, we made that decision because you told me it would only be X. I'm prefacing this with that these are incomplete.
And so because we don't have an offer on the table of a precast proposal, we don't know how they would be able to do a schedule, right? We know that these folks are able to work with our schedule so that our players are not displaced.
I'm not aware of if the cooperative agreements are available for those. I mean, these are like self-contained, pre-engineered packages. So you're already on the clock, so to speak. So it has to go through a design process and then a bid process to get that out there before, and then they have to fabricate it.
Right.
And presumably while it's being fabricated, we're going to demolish it. Nobody told me how long that would take to demolish it, but I'd be willing to bet it's probably pretty close to 3 months, 2 to 3 months. You think about both sides and the logistics of moving in and out and protecting what you got there. So that would have to figure it into our time frame. So this year would be out of the question, okay? It would have to be a plan for next summer. But then, can they install a new one
Within that
in the
time.
time frame that, I don't know. We'd have to get that input. I mean,
Jack, I'm curious, based on your own statement of you don't like to leave your contingency below 10%, would it not be prudent then, based on your own information, instead of putting in a 10 and 15%, put a 15% on both?
Well,
Have that more equitable?
yes, and ordinarily I would, but as I said, 80% of our costs is known already, right? He's given us a proposal at 1.5.
And along those lines, and since you're still here, if you don't mind,
Oh, sure.
where we're looking at the demolition costs, you mentioned that just came in at 150, so there's a lot of benefits there to have that information. From unless I misunderstood, there's still going to be some demolition removal of material.
Absolutely.
So,
that's included.
so your company's not charging us for that?
Well, no,
Because it's listed as not applicable.
It's included.
Okay.
No,
It's included in my
the cost, it
Okay.
says,
It's
included.
in my proposal. So you see,
Okay,
because
gotcha.
I'm doing a targeted demolition, which is basically, I'm only cutting out the parts of the precast that are gonna interfere with my caissons.
Sure.
And I laid my caissons, which is my foundation system, out, so they're gonna miss the big concrete breaker beams. Because
Gotcha.
they're easy to tell where they are, because you just look at the expansion joints, they're 25 feet in center. So I knew where they were. I laid out my foundation system so that it would miss those. So all I'm doing is cutting out the portions of precast I need to cut out to be able to auger into the ground. And so yes, it is included in my, and I also don't mind saying that on to replace the precast is basically a much larger construction undertaking, and would be a lot more equipment on site and a lot. I don't see how they'd be able to clean it up enough to be able to, for you all to use your facility, just in what I've seen working around precast in my career. And that's just something, but it is, my demo is included in my proposal.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, trying to get as close to an apple as we can here. With either, and I just want to clarify my own point, with either construction, we're going to have to add in the additional cost for ramps or new walkways, correct?
yes.
Okay.
Just
And-
that's outside of his
Yeah,
work.
like the site stuff, you see,
Right.
the way the code's written, it's not enough to have your stands ADA accessible. You have to have ADA access
Right.
to the bleachers from parking lots, I run into this on projects where I'm building, like, we're working at Harrisonburg High School up the road there. We're gonna be done well in advance of the whole site and whole school. Sometimes I get pressured to get a final inspection on my bleacher system and football stadium before I don't do it anymore, because early in my career, I would do it. The inspector would walk out and say, "You got no parking lots, you got no sign," and I'm like, "But that's not part of my permit, it's not part of my contract." But you don't have any parking lots, you don't have bathrooms on flag. So it's outside of the bleacher work is what he's saying. So it's something that, now I can definitely do it, and I'd be happy once, to work with Jack on a design for it and see what all's involved, because there might be a savings on that, doing it at the same time I do the rest of my concrete. Because my guys can definitely do that, they're well versed in all management. So there's a potential for a little bit of savings on that. We wouldn't, he's making a guess, and we'd have to sit down and lay out everything that's involved in that in order to put a hard number to it. But I could perform it at the same time.
We've priced it. We'll give you a chance to bid on it.
Thank you.
And it may be a conversation, we're getting too far into the weeds where we're looking at high-level things at this point, but do we have any idea of pricing of the ramps and walkways as well as temporary bleachers if they're necessary? So I'm trying to look at total cost here, and frankly, what I'm looking at, the conversation that happened, high-level bids previously, 1.7 million, now we're looking at 1,996, plus the cost of the walkways, plus the cost of temporary bleachers, plus. I'm having a little deja vu, and I'm a financial guy, I'm a banker, so it's a little tough nut for me to swallow at times. Do we have any idea of estimate of what total project cost would be or could be?
Well, the ones early on did not include total project costs.
Sure, yeah.
These show fees, these show contingency, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And we did price site improvements. We did takeoffs for the amount of ramp that we would need, and stairs on the other side, and repaving, coming back with whether I priced both asphalt paving and concrete on the one concourse going up to the home side. So I do have a general idea for that. Hasn't been designed yet.
Sure.
But that's part of having a contingency too, is to account for things that may get added or surprises that come along. But this is certainly, again, I'll say on the infill system, I feel very good about that because, again, we have a proposal in hand. And the time frame is certainly one that will be significantly less. There's no doubt about it. It'll be significantly less than the other time frame.
I just want to be clear on that, because actually, not to put you on the spot, Jack, and I appreciate what you do, but I asked very specifically in January, whenever we were looking at all this and that timeline first hit us, and I think collectively I heard the whole community go, because I certainly did. I was shocked by it, thinking, well, we can't lose our field during the season. That's just not.
That was the print I
That's-
had.
that's not an option.
Print I had in red.
For me, that's crossing a line I'm not willing to try and cross. But with that being, and I appreciate all the work that Rob, you've gone back and worked with Jack and everybody on this, and the board's heard the feedback, and we've all expressed that, and I appreciate everybody trying to be as sensitive to that as we can. But the the question I posed in January at the meeting was, is one system faster than the other? Obviously, with the intent of we were looking at the aluminum system, if we go to concrete precast, would it be faster? And the statement was no. So now at this point,
I don't believe that's the case.
I mean, that's why I asked. And in January,
Not
the
in
comment was
terms
no.
of time. What we were looking at that time.
So in this case, the aluminum, now what we're saying, the aluminum is faster.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Partially because of the savings in the design time frame.
Okay.
But
That's what I was going to add two things to that. First of all, he's exactly right. With my system, the design is done first.
Mhm.
Okay? With the precast system, Jack has to put together a set of bid documents and has to go out to bid. And then so that's going to take time. And then after that, collect the bids. And then after that, we'll make an award. And after that, then they start their own process. And that's the process. It really blows the timeline. That was part one. Part two, with my system, you're using the field. Even if we're starting where you're using the field, like I said, you're going to use the press box, you're going to use the field. To answer your question about the temporary bleachers, I need some idea of the capacity of what you'd be what you'd need in addition to what your visitor side holds. And then I can tell you pretty much exactly what that would be. It's based on capacity. It's like the type of thing that, 100 seats is more per seat than 1,000 seats.
Sure.
Okay, so if you have an idea of how much more capacity you need beyond the visitor side, I could provide that fairly quickly, and that would give you. And it also makes people point out, yes, there's always some unknowns in the design build world, but I think Jack's contingency is extremely reasonable, considering everything that is known with my system. Okay, I know how big it's going to be. I know how many rows it's going to be. I know how much aluminum material it's going to take. I know how much steel material it's going to take. We know, roughly how long it's going to take to install within, like a week or so, right? The contingency, what we don't know, the assumptions that were made were basically having to do with the soil condition, which we're going to nail that down and see once we get an order, see what my structural engineer, how he actually designs the caissons and how large they actually are. So those things, those always a part of design build world. But the time savings you pick up, the amount of time you pick up versus holding the classic bid is really crucial, especially if you're trying to do something for this season.
To answer your other question, I don't know what temporary bleachers would cost. We put out feelers. I just haven't heard back yet.
Just tell me how many seats you're looking for, and I can.
All right. So that will help, and we can look at, gate data too from previous games, depending on the teams that you're playing, that sort of thing. And the other thing, I apologize if you took that, however I said it the other time, but certainly it would definitely take longer to do the precast system.
I apologize if I wasn't clear. I was just looking, is there an opportunity that we had available in either, circumstance, whatever it would be, to overcome the timeline,
Right.
which again, to me
Well,
was a major source of
Yeah.
heartburn.
And I know
Still is.
you weren't here in November when the discussion that we had on one over the other, and I was
I was
showing.
in the audience then.
Okay, well, I was showing them as virtually equal costs,
Yeah.
and the reason why we went the aluminum route was because it was twofold. One, its longevity and durability. I mean, none of us would ever have to deal with this again if you went that route. But the other major thing was the time savings. And I mean, that was well above the other. I mean, I said a lot of positive things about replacing it in place. I mean, there's nothing to, you know, apologize, Chris, but you know, it feels different under your feet, even if it is a very self-contained, watertight system, code compliant and all that. And I would love a whole new stadium just the way it was too. But I mean, I don't set the time frames, I don't set the costs. I'm just trying to advise you from what I've learned and what I know about.
I appreciate it.
So a question about that, because that is one of the concerns, is that, you know, we've had a concrete stadium for all these years, and to move to a aluminum stadium would be a major change. Can you tell me the differences? You know, is it different in how, you know, it feels when you walk on it, when you clean, you know, if it's wet, is it slippery? Is it louder in the community? You know, that sort of thing. Oh, thanks. You're good. It's so that the folks who are watching from home who
Sure.
can't be here tonight.
So the best thing I could say is, since Radford University baseball stand is literally right down the street, when you get a chance, go there and see. Our system is a fully closed interlocking system. Each plank locks together, so you're going to have structural members every 6 foot that are very solid when you stand on. You will know when. And then when you walk off of those, because it's aluminum, and even though it's locked together, it's not going to feel like concrete. That's 100% the truth, all right? But it is very durable. It is very sturdy, and that's one of the reasons we do the planks locked together, because that gives you like a sort of a longitudinal structural integrity perpendicular to the structural member that's underneath. Okay, so that would be my. I believe that facility is open pretty much any time, and to go and walk on that and see that would be, I think, beneficial. So you could judge for yourself. Aluminum is typically a little bit louder. We have things we can do if that's a concern in the community to mitigate that when we're doing the install. You know, sort of like an insulating factor that would you know, quiet things down, and you know, so we could explore that as well. And while it would be an ad, it wouldn't get you to anywhere near where the precast price was. Okay, so that's an option too if that is a concern, and that's part of the you know, purpose of this forum is to voice the concerns and, you know, have me clear up confusion, answer questions. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you. Now, what about if it's wet?
Oh, there's slip resistance. Yes, we do have our extrusion has a rib in it. It just by its nature. So our mill finish extrusion carries in the construction industry. It's called a coefficient of friction, a 0.5 coefficient of friction, which is the same as this floor. It's a building code that any floor you put in a building has to at least have a 0.5 coefficient of friction, so that's considered not a slippery surface. Okay. If you were interested in an enhancement to that, we offer a treatment to our deck that would boost it up to a 0.8. It's a factory applied treatment that you know, takes it up even higher. But the ribs are extruded high enough, and just the general design of the system, with it being pitched slightly to the front in a rainstorm to have water running off, subdeck gutters that will catch water at butt joints so there's nothing, you know, running down to the grade beneath, and then downspouts that are connected to your existing drainage over there. Are all considerations where we keep the ribs are high enough that it maintains a 0.5 whether it's wet or dry. Okay. But like I said, we have an option of doing an enhanced surface that some folks do go with and are very well happy with. Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Chris, you also included in your proposal there too, like that's red.
The risers.
Oh yes.
So
You guys are my colors, black and gold. So yes,
those would
yes.
be
Yes,
kind of black and gold.
the vertical piece that closes the gap between treads is called the riser board. Those will be painted, and what I really like about stadiums that have rises between rows greater than 8 inches. Yours is going to be 13. We get to put an intermediate step. I sent you.
Yeah.
There's actually this is an intermediate step right here. This step also has a riser on it that can be the contrasting color. So you tell me, you want the primary color to be black and the contrasting color to be the gold, or you want the primary color gold, the contrasting color black. That's how we do it. So yes, there's color on that, and the facade that comes
That's in
down.
their bid. We asked them to include
Yes.
that. We
Yeah,
don't have to
that's
put it
part-
everywhere. We can decide where, but it is in the bid prices.
Thank you.
Thanks.
But one thing I do want you to note, again, is there's no openings in this thing, okay? The front face and even the rear, it'll be encased, so, and I imagine, I can't say for certain, but that would help with sound attenuation too, I imagine, if it's not open on one end, but
Correct.
that side at the top will have a solid surface to it.
So we don't have to be concerned that our neighbors who are just on the other side of the stadium are going to get blown out of the water when we're winning.
Well, they have to deal with, screaming like probably
I mean,
high
I think
decibels.
they're probably
yeah.
pretty used to having lots of cheering. I just want to make sure that the sound, the decibel level isn't going to
Well,
go up some nutty amount.
You know what? I'll tell you what I noticed it's different, because I've done a fair number of basketball arenas too, surprisingly. And it seems like stomping your feet is much more of a basketball thing when somebody's on the foul line than a football thing. I can't say that.
We've got a Bobcat
I
Rumble.
encourage
though.
Oh, you
you to
do?
come by and see the
Yeah.
Bobcats,
Okay.
especially the band.
All right.
They got you covered.
All right, nice.
We love all of our sports here.
That's awesome. Then the point is to be loud, right? Well, then we probably want to, if do anything, we want to enhance the volume. We don't want to
I don't
dampen.
think
we
you're
don't
going to
want
hit
dampen.
anything in terms of what
Okay.
your concern is.
What's the standard warranty for something like this?
I offer a 5-year warranty against all for finishes and structure.
Do we have any other questions from Ms. Swing, Ms.
The
Boyd?
standard in the industry, Bob, is 1 year.
Oh, okay.
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 Okay, thank you.
Man.
I have someone who's concerned about the fact that it's gonna be, 4 feet higher at the top. Can you explain again why that's necessary?
Certainly. It has to do with mainly the fact that we can't do what my preferred method of doing this type of project is. We're getting ready to start a project at Annapolis High School, right up the street from us in Annapolis, where the condition of the precast is very good, and we don't need to do foundations, and we don't need to do I-beams that carry our raker beams. You're on the slide right there. What I'm referring to is we need to do a foundation system, or those are I-beams right there. We can literally, with just some very small columns, lay our stringers right on top of the precast. I have to be honest, when I first heard, before I came out and saw the stadium, when I first heard it was a precast stadium, and considering we're getting ready to start this job at Annapolis High School, that's exactly what I went to. I thought in my head, we're just going to go out there, we're going to look at this. Yeah, it might be a little messed up in some places, but I'm sure it's not going to be so bad that we can't just do a basic overlay with minimal structure. But that, unfortunately, is just not the case for you guys. So what drives it is the elevation. This is the top of my concrete pier. This, as well as the size of this I-beam that I have to size in order to span, these piers are, so this I-beam has to carry that load. That drives that. Okay, and I actually want to stress something that while, yes, we're elevated 4 feet in the back, if you can go back to the slide that has the side view, the colored side view, this is, we measured this wall from the existing concrete deck and from the grade, and this is all you see from the side when we're done. Yes, it's going to be elevated, but if you'd like, I can get some.
I got it.
If you'd like, I can forward some photos of similar situations we've done, so you can see the facade, how it hides the structure, and then the fence on the back. I think that might be useful, just to put that to the.
Did you by chance do the stadium at,
Yes.
one that's very much like what you're proposing? Independence High School in Ashland.
Yes, ma'am. Independence, Riverside, Tuscarora,
Really would love to see some pictures.
Woodgrove. Certainly. I can provide those for you.
I can send that to you too.
Yes.
I've sent it to some. I can send it to you.
Oh, really? I try to keep, when we do stuff like this, I try to keep the photos sort of relevant to, that project. And that's a completely different project than what we're proposing for you guys, but I'm happy to send you those photos, yeah. Oh, it is, absolutely, yeah. Independence is a classic, pre-engineered bleacher system and home and visitor side built on a flat site with tons of space and asphalt paving underneath and all that. It's not on a hillside. It's not. But the thing about Loudoun County that I get a kick out of is they build the same school over and over and over and over and over again. I can literally go back 10 years when they put a bid out and like look at and I just adjust my number. It's always the exact same thing. They save a lot of money building the same high school and the same amenities and the same thing everywhere. But yeah, I'm happy to send you photos of anything, but I mean that's not something that.
It's not going to be representative of what we
Right.
will look at.
Right, but I can get photos of some rear facades and walkways, and so you can see what that looks like.
Let me add just one additional comment here. So these two beams, which are spanning 25 so feet, or somewhere-
30 between they span anywhere between their whole span is 30 feet. The beam is, but the foundation spacing is anywhere from 18 to 24.
Right.
depending on what we got
So
going on.
that's obviously significant depth to it. But this beam going in this direction, the rake beam, unlike what you have now, these are on like 6-foot centers. So
Correct, yes.
Adds a lot of rigidity to this thing. If you think about it,
Yes.
you have 2 steps and you're over top of another beam, so you're not going to get that bounciness that you probably.
You don't get the bounciness on the interlock system anyway. It's just if you're asking if it's what's the difference between it and concrete, I'm just going to say you're going to notice a difference, but it's not going to be like the old school interlock together, and you're basically like walking on a diving board when you walk between.
Okay.
Sets.
What type of yearly maintenance is needed for something like that?
None.
None. Okay.
Another advantage of this system is the cost of ownership. I also couldn't believe what you guys have spent on this system in the last several years. It just a precast system should never cost that much to keep up. But with my system, the cost of ownership is zero. It doesn't move. It does move because aluminum will expand and contract, and obviously when you load it with people, there's some stress on the understructure. The design is such that the bolts are torqued to the point that, after an earthquake, we'd probably have to come out here and tighten some things up. But after even a rowdy football season or 10 football seasons, don't have to do anything.
I can tell you that in the Code of Virginia that you, as a school, and anybody who owns bleachers, are supposed to, on an annual basis, observe them. So that's one of the reasons why there's access to get under there, to make sure nothing is loosened up or that there is a problem. I can tell you most don't subscribe to that, most school systems, because we've gone out with several counties wide from here and provided that service to a lot of them.
Do we have other questions?
Just to be clear on the 4-foot elevation, adding that to it. So behind the bleachers, if you're walking in, you can't see the game, basically, right? You won't be able to see the field.
Correct. If you don't go up, yeah.
And there'll be a set of stairs, I'm assuming.
Yeah, there's a set of stairs on each end, and then there's ADA ramps that you can access.
And
really, 90% of people use the ramps as opposed to stairs. For some reason, that's what I
And
was.
then there's a 6-foot aisleway on the back.
Right, it's kind of, we've moved it from outside to inside now. So if you're standing there, I guess you stand with the fence behind you and you lean against the fence instead of lean forward against the
Now,
fence.
what I can say is that if that is a really big concern, I want to point out that my goal at the beginning is always to maximize the seating capacity, and that's what drove my decision to do the rear walkway. If it would be possible to match the elevation of your existing concrete walkway, it would be done with not so many rows. So you would lose a good bit of capacity. Yeah, you would lose a good bit of capacity doing that.
I was going to
Okay.
ask that question. So instead of continuing all the way up, we would continue that
That's
straight
that's
across.
exactly what you do. You'd
Okay, so
find,
then we're at this level,
yeah,
and you lose that many
Lost
rows of
those
seats.
rows.
yeah.
But you could do that as long as you still had an access to get in
Yes.
beneath there.
Yes, and we would just need to, like bring that structure down and tie it to the existing concrete right there. So we had, in essence, you'd have your concrete walkway and then you'd have an aluminum walkway, because I wouldn't be able to just start seating right there at that point. It would be an aluminum walkway at the same elevation as your concrete walkway, and we would have 3 or 4 less rows, something like that.
We just continue it straight out
Yes,
from here.
that's exactly it.
If that were the case, would the fence still be invalid?
Oh, no. If we're at the same elevation, then have to have a fence. No, that's the one.
And the
You don't
fence
have
is
to
in
have-
place of a guardrail on the sides. So
Well,
it's a
yeah,
less-
our guardrail is an anodized pipe and either galvanized or black vinyl chain link fence. That's our basic. We have, if you go to Radford, you'd see a very nice vertical picket system. We offer that, and I do glass guardrail as well. But the basic, like the most economical is the black vinyl chain link, and that's what we roll with here. So that's what you would see on the back is anodized pipe and black vinyl chain link. But if we lower it to the same elevation as you lose seats, but you would not have that guardrail then.
Could we get the information of how many seats we would lose?
I can tell you that, absolutely. I can figure,
'Cause
I
could
would,
lose seats, I don't know if you're talking 20 or 2,000.
no, you'd be losing,
I know that's-
I can tell you pretty quickly.
if you could figure 4 rows, here, let me see. Here,
325.
well, if you figure 4 rows,
With me.
yeah, 4 rows, the length of the stand. So that would be, if you go to my plan view,
That's what I was going to do here.
all right, let's see. So, you were just on the plan view. Let me-
Sorry, somehow I added a new slide. Come on.
And another.
Why won't it take it?
Did you go out of presentation mode?
All right,
I did,
there we go. Let's
but
see. So, in these sections, each row is 25. So that's going to be 100 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that'd be 700, not counting the ends. And each end has 8 per row, so like 764. So you'd
That's
still
a
be
lot
over.
of
You'd
seats.
still be over 2,000. But I mean, it would
That's a lot of seats.
it would significantly reduce your capacity.
Okay.
That's a lot.
So the total,
Total would drop to like 20, like under 2,200.
2,200.
But it could be done. I mean, it's you can do that.
Or there's a smaller step and you add another row. I mean, there's other options. I assume that would reduce the cost a little bit too.
Yeah, we could reduce. We keep the same configuration and like cut a couple of rows out. I mean, if you were really if it's a real if the rear walkway and the design as it is a real rub, then yeah. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I mean, I'm flexible. I can pretty much do whatever. It's just I want to let you know that there's a give and take with everything.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Sure.
All right, do we have other questions for either of our presenters on the board? No?
What is your, I guess.
You're good.
Sure.
I guess I do that.
That's fine.
And you probably said it in there somewhere in the last couple of hours, but what is the total if we said start today, you had the materials sitting here, what is the total timeline to actually do it?
If materials here,
Everything's sitting here on site.
everything's sitting here on site. Okay. Well, if you want to go back to, just so I'm not doing it from memory, if you
Trying to find
go
my
back to the
schedule
schedule slide,
here.
I believe
Where was it? Was it? No, it was before. wasn't it?
I have 6 weeks, 6 weeks of like of regular time, not counting over it. 6 weeks of regular time to both home and the visitor side, and then an additional 3 before that to do the. I'm sorry, 4 weeks before that to do the selective demolition and the concrete installation. Okay, so it would be a total of a 10-week build if you're starting from one time. But generally, what we do is we do the demolition and the foundation work before the material gets here. So it's not like a. But if, in the case of postponing until the end of the season, then it would be a scenario just like you laid out. We wouldn't do anything until the end of the season, and then as soon as the season was over, it would be basically 10 weeks from that
That's
point.
what I asked.
Yeah, in this scenario.
And that's weather permitting too. I mean,
We figured that once that we went through his design, shop drawings approved, order placed, then you're like the end of the spring, we would work on the other items, the accessory ramps. They'd begin if the issue of access in the fall was not there, okay, that wasn't a problem. They could begin in the summer doing all the associated work. They cut out and do the caissons that are necessary. So as soon as the material arrived, they just start installing.
What is the cost if we chose to do that, wait till after football season? What is the cost to get the bleachers in proper condition to get through football season the way they are?
That's a good question.
I don't know that
How
yet.
long would we have once they're?
On both sides,
Yeah.
because there is some needed repairs on the visitor side too.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
No, there is some areas in the visitor side. It's much better than the home, but there's still areas of the visitor side that exhibit some of the same degrading. It's just, there's none of those holes, there's none of the breaks at the joints, there's none of that. But there's stairs and edges, the nosings with the degrading and sloughing off there.
And a couple other things with that too, are those repairs that you're gonna do there. One of the things that our school board attorney has asked for is a report from Thompson Litton, which Jack provided today, and I'll share with him tomorrow, but to make sure that he approves that report for us to have those and to be able to use the bleachers too. So we'll send that to him tomorrow for that. And do we also want to spend that money on the bleachers to get them ready for fall season, and then have Chris come in and cover them all up too?
And
You'll
do
need to think
everything we
about
just
that
paid
too.
for.
Well, that's why I'm asking the cost. I mean,
Yeah, and
I think
to answer that question,
determine
I don't,
itself.
yeah, and I don't know that yet because it was a lot of chicken and egg things here. I needed to talk to the building official, but I couldn't talk to the building official till I knew what the proposal was going to be. I get at the end of last week, Monday, we met with the building official. We discussed all these phasing scenarios. He was okay with that, but if you're going to use the stadium, that some
changes it.
repairs need to be made. Now, the extent of those and what they might cost, I can't say if I were to just right here,
Yeah, I understand.
I'd say under $50,000, but that's a really big number, I know, but I'm not comfortable homing in on anything less than that.
I would like to know that, if you get that. The other thing I would like to know is if we didn't do that, we just sectioned off the sections that were unsafe.
Mhm.
Can we legally do that? Is it safe?
Well, we
enough
still would
do
have to do the stairs. The
stairs.
stairs are my greatest concern.
Okay.
Those nosings have to be fixed to some degree.
That's him too. I know that. But
Yeah, I know
he'll
that.
get the
That's why
report
I'm-
tomorrow.
Yeah, I know he would have to
Mhm.
give an opinion about that, but.
But
I just
he was
wonder,
on board with that approach,
big
though.
picture for me, the
Mhm.
question, what would it cost us financially to save the season completely and not have to touch it?
Mhm.
That's, and if we vote on going with your system and you get it gives you time to get everything in and it sat there or whatever, stored it until, it's
We just what we would do in the second scenario of waiting by the football season, and Southern Bleachman Fabricator loves this, but we get everything done with the approved drawings and everything, and I say, hey, don't ship this till the end of October, early November. Or let's talk, because if you guys make the playoffs, then you need it for a couple more weeks. Then. We would be flexible like that, but it would you wouldn't have to worry about keeping it on site or anything like that.
Okay.
We wouldn't ship it until then. And we obviously wouldn't start doing any foundation of demo work if you were
Until then.
But on that note, if you give me some idea of what capacity you need to add to the visitor side to go with the first option, I could at least figure up a price for temporary bleachers to add to that side, so you could have a capacity that you're comfortable with for the option one, if you decide. So you'd have all the information to know if you want to do that versus the other.
Okay, thank you.
To answer your question, knowing the cost, the only thing that we really don't know on the aluminum bleacher is what the cost of those improvements might be. If you want to forego doing it, because he's already said he'll hold his price till after season, and you don't have to do any of that season. You just wait.
If we pull the trigger now, yes.
Right, well, we understand.
Yeah. We understand.
We understand. And that's where my head is. I'm trying to figure out for myself anyway, is what's the cost of not touching until afterwards?
Right.
What's the timeline if we did it that way? And you've answered those, but I guess we just need to know the cost of the minimal repair. If you're looking at a minimal viable product to get us through whatever that date would be.
Coverage to mitigate any liability we would potentially be incurring, covering that.
That's the real issue, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we don't want anyone to get hurt, but
Of course.
we want to cover
But
that
there's going to be
too.
a cost to that, whatever that
That's
cost
right.
would be.
Yeah. All right, any other questions? All right. Thank you very much for your time and all this work that you've put into these presentations for us so we can make the best informed decision we can.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation and for patiently listening to everything we had to say. I really, really appreciate it.
All
I
right.
know
Appreciate the questions too.
Chris has a long drive back, but I will stay around to listen to other comments, and if need be, I can, if you want me to, I'll leave. I'll do that too. Tell me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bradford citizen, you can stay. It's your town too.
All right. We need to take a break before we get to public comments. Does anybody need a break?
It's up to you.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else?
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. All right, and we'll move on to our citizen comments regarding the stadium discussion. So that's what we're going to focus on tonight, because that's why we're here. If you have other general comments, for a regular board meeting, if you can reserve those until our February 14th meeting. And I will read our information before we do that. Reports, requests, and/or comments by public, students, and/or school personnel. This part of the meeting is reserved for public comments regarding items on our agenda or in regards to Radford City Schools. It is your opportunity to address the board. You are requested to keep your comments polite and courteous. Speakers are asked to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect of the dignity and privacy of others who may be affected by your comments. Speakers should be aware that they may be held legally responsible if they make statements that violate the legal rights of others. For example, if statements are made that are defamatory or threatening. Complaints about specific school personnel are best addressed to school administration, who will address those concerns as appropriated through existing board complaint procedures. Please remember that you cannot mention specific student names during public comments. Comments likely to disrupt the board's work or prompt a breach of the peace are prohibited, and the speaker will be called out of order by the board chair. Please remember that debate during public comments is prohibited. For the record, please state your name and address. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes per speaker at board meetings. And if anyone wishes, they can come to the podium. We've got
Why don't you
a
do
list
your
of folks,
folks
to speak, and I've got some that were sent in. We got a lot of letters, in this last couple week, I guess month almost, half a month. We've had a lot of email correspondence between, folks in the community. We've had a lot of conversations and phone calls. I know that there's been a lot on Facebook, but we've really done a lot to we've received a lot of communication. We've taken it to heart. And so we appreciate all those previous letters, and these are the public comments that we received. This came in from Steve Deischer on January 31st, 2023, address 907 Forest Avenue. And he says, the main concern I have on the high school football stadium project is about the timeline. If we were not able to guarantee that the timing of the project in 2023 will not affect any of our sports being played in our stadium, then we should delay the project to late May or June of 2024. We should not sacrifice our seniors being able to play their respective sports in Bobcat Stadium on Norman G. Lundberg Field. Okay, that's the first one. Thank you, Stephen. The second one is from Sarah Hall, also on January 31st, 2023. Address is 6269 Stone Ridge Drive in Dublin. The aluminum stands are personally not the best option since we have elderly folk come to our games. I personally have a dislocated knee twice, and walking on slippery aluminum or anything wet could cause me to fall again and dislocate it again when it rains at the games. When it rains at the games, it will become slippery and cause the band's instruments to fall and break as well. Thank you for the consideration. All right, thank you, Ms. Hall. And the third one we have is from Cynthia Hall. And there isn't an address, but it was written to the board, and I think it came in this afternoon. To Radford City's Public School Board and Radford City community. I am writing regarding proposal to renovate the RHS football stadium. As a proud Bobcat alumna, I support renovation in the form of replacing the precast concrete bleachers. Regardless of my personal opinion, I sought engineering perspectives from my colleagues and faculty members at West Virginia University Institute of Technology. The evaluation was based on the minutes PPT of potential options for repair. Our engineers strongly encouraged replacement of the bleachers with precast concrete. This was based on the longevity of various structural engineering and fiscal responsibility. I've attended RHS football games within the past year, and I agree that the current bleachers are in need of repair. I strongly support the Radford City Board of Education in allocating and making this decision. I will urge them to err toward a decision that is economically and structurally sound. From my experience and understanding, replacing the precast will occur regardless and will be long-lasting. Given the nature and size of aluminum seating, it reduces inclusivity, diversity, and could potentially be an ADA concern. RHS's stadium has for decades supported the parents, supporters, and fans from a diverse spectrum of disabilities. I encourage the Radford Public School Board to support the best decision regarding the stadium. Did I, as a student athlete, love the concrete precast bleachers? Yes. Our RHS stands felt special because they were concrete stands and not cheap aluminum retractable stands. Those precast stands at Radford High School certainly feels like home to this alumna. In conclusion, I support restoration of the precast both because it has fiscal and structural integrity verified by engineers, but also because it is unique and feels like home. I urge the board and community to support the renovation of the stadium in the form of precast concrete bleachers. Respectfully, Cynthia Hall. All right, thank you, Ms. Hall. All right, so those are the three we received online. We've got folks who signed up at the podium to come and speak. And first is Ms. Bella Calfee.
Do we need the microphone clipped, or is it good here?
I think it's probably okay there if it's.
Can you
hear? Well,
can you hear
it's
us? Yeah, it's
there's a delay.
That's right.
Do you need her to clip it?
Usually to clip it.
You can do it on your string if it's.
Yeah.
You can put the box in your pouch if you want to,
There we go.
in case you move.
All right. Good evening. My name is Bella Calfee. I live on 8197 7th Street here in Radford. My appearance is quite different than usual this evening. Normally I'm in a dress or a suit and a pair of heels. Tonight I'm wearing a Radford Bobcats hoodie and a pair of my tennis shoes. Because tonight I'm not here as a political advocate, a 9th District Congressional Chair, or a leadership of a club. I'm here as a student, a rising senior, gosh, that's a wake-up call, a color guard captain, a classmate, a class president, a Bobcat. In my role as class president, it is my job to relay student needs and wants. It is not shocking that we have many students, including myself, that are extremely passionate about our school campus, and as we say here in Bobcat country, bleed black and gold. Before I delve into what makes our stadium great, I thought I would show you. Since we can't, unfortunately, invite you for a football game now, I brought with me a collage of memories to hopefully visualize everything I'm about to share with you. Those of you back here, some of you guys are on here. All right. The Radford High School Stadium evokes many emotions, tradition, excitement, a sense of home. There's not a broom closet that you can be in on a crisp Friday in the fall on our campus that you can escape the feeling of anticipation for the evening to come. More often than not, you will hear people excitedly exclaim, "It's game day!" between each and every class. All is to say, we take football very seriously around here. Whether running under the goalpost, cheering on the track, or marching through the gates, you see the stadium and it feels like home. Those Friday night lights hit the stadium just right, and all the stars seem to align. This is usually about the time we all accept we're going to lose our voice by night's end. Now we are faced with the realization that all of that may change. The stadium that we all grew up in is changing. Our home for many after-school practices and those glorious Friday nights is going to be different. Now we know that no matter what happens, aluminum, our traditional concrete, or silly putty, home is wherever we are together as a Bobcat community. However, there is just something about the concrete stadium that brings us all together. It is a symbol of strength and security that has stood for decades. Generations of Bobcats have sat in those stands, and when they come home, they bring in the next generation and teach them what it means to be a Bobcat. Tonight, we are joined by the current generation of RHS Bobcats, and we ask one simple thing. Let us keep tradition on campus and allow the stadium we all know and love to be refurbished to what it once was, so that our children may grow up in those stands as we did. Let the future generations be able to feel all the stars align and live Friday nights as we do. Each time I've spoken to my peers, they are understandably saddened and shocked about the current changes coming toward our stadium. As I present the current fix versus the potential to revamp the concrete, it is overwhelmingly clear that students ask, nothing changes. I understand that this seems like such a microscopic problem and how it doesn't seem like it should matter. But if we can bring inspiration and a sense of home within our campus, I'd say that ideal is worth its weight in gold. As a student representative and lifelong Bobcat, born and raised, I humbly and respectfully ask the board to reconsider. Every athlete here is trusting you with a piece of our heart. If we take a moment and look at these faces in this gallery tonight, it won't take long to see that. We're trusting you. Don't let us down. As always, go Bobcats and have a blessed evening. Thank you.
All right, next we have Mr. Richie Davis.
All right, good evening, everybody. And I'm Richie Davis. I'm a lifelong resident of Radford. I appreciate the school board, all of the school boards that we've had. You may know this or not, I went in front of the city council when I got this brought to my attention because it was something sudden for me. And so my motion to you all is to backtrack, to pump the brakes, and to let's reconsider not only the financial expenditures, but what exactly we're doing here. When it first came to mind for me, it was about the demolition of the concrete and putting in metal bleachers. And that, for me, and I know I speak for a lot of people because I got together with a lot of parents, that was unacceptable. It was not something that made sense, but I certainly believe that the stadium needs repair. Okay, the pictures speak for themselves. So we're here. There's a picture in the courthouse that is of me back in 1981 with the stadium in the background with some of the others. I've got it on my phone if anybody wants to look at it. That stadium and I are about the same age. Okay, we're like big brother, little brother. I'm a little bit older than the stadium, but I can tell you that growing up beside the stadium, I grew up right across the street. And walking into that place and seeing the greatest quarterback, in Bobcat history back there, and seeing second greatest quarterback, last year in the history of the Bobcats, it is this legendary, iconic place for this small city. And it means a lot to me, and it's not just the place, because there are other stadiums, and even these pictures of the really pretty aluminum stadiums, I'm not putting them down. I just believe that Bobcat Stadium is so special in the way it was constructed and the way we have evolved it. If in Jack's presentation, and again, I thank you, because I think you've done a wonderful job, not only working hard at what you do in the history. We just have to agree to disagree on this one, because I think the concrete should have been given a whole lot more emphasis, not only because financially I believe it would be better, but there are people that Jack used, and again, I've gotten permission to use people's names. Travis Eccles from Extreme is who they have used. In the last meeting when we were here on November the 8th for what was really the first discussion, I guess, in detail before the board, and then, in my opinion, which was a capricious and arbitrary move of going from a discussion to an agenda item and approving the aluminum at that time, that was just rushed, because everybody, Lee Slusher was on the board at that time, they were just concerned about safety, and there's nobody here that's not concerned about safety. Dr. Ray, you were concerned about safety in those kind of discussions. My point on this is that we really didn't give concrete the chance, and we know it based on what you've seen here tonight, as well as what was shown. That this is the slide that Jack Murphy used, to start off things on November the 8th, and right on the top, it's just extensive repairs to precast not recommended. And so concrete, the repairing of the concrete, going through experts that know how to do that, wasn't given any weight. And Jack, why is that? Well, that's because he didn't believe in it. He mentioned in his opening remarks today, and again, I've gotten more detail, that there were 2 structural engineers that they had, and it was mentioned here, it's the first time I'd seen it brought to the board's attention, that there was a recommendation from Extreme Concrete, Travis Eccles, who said, let's consider 2-inch approval and to put concrete over top of all this. He never got word back as to that not being approved. It's my understanding from the Booster Club meeting that took place after your all's January 10th meeting that the Booster Club was advised that that was just too heavy, that it was determined, but nobody's seen that study. And that's certainly something that, when I say pump the brakes, this decision that was made when 3 of you all were elected to the board, that decision was made that same day. It seems to me that when you were brought back January 10th, and again, that's the slide that Jack Murphy showed you, it already highlighted the middle part, which was the replacing the precast with aluminum bleachers. And so again, repairing the concrete and just demolishing it seemed to be the way it was going. And I'm happy with this meeting. I commend all of you all. Is that my time limit?
Finish up.
Okay.
You're good.
I commend all of you all for opening this up to the public. You can see that there are people that are good Bobcats, we're all good Bobcats, that carry a different opinion than Thompson and Litton, and the decision making related to taking the concrete or even covering the concrete and walking on this aluminum. You cited the one lady that talked about slipping on it. For me, it's about walking into this 50-plus-year-old stadium and having its same look and its same majesty and its iconic look that everybody, I bring people back here all the time and I show them Bobcat Stadium, not because of bleachers, but because of the beautiful concrete and the way it was designed. So that's my 2 cents. Travis Eccles from Extreme Concrete, who Mr. Graham has highlighted in these meetings with you all, so has Jack Murphy. He would love to make a presentation to you all on concrete. There is a engineer that has been an expert for me in the courtroom. Okay, his name is Jordan Truesdale, the brightest guy I know. Okay, other than those engineers back there, Doug Knipe and maybe Marty Woodard, who are my friends, and so I have to give them props. But the main thing is this: Jordan Truesdale knows about structural concrete and has done so many things and was involved with me in a case. And he's somebody that I guarantee you would want to listen to and find out, can you save the concrete and can this be done at a more efficient price than what you've been given here today. It started out at 1.7, jumped up almost to 2 million tonight, with the other people well in excess of 2 million.
All right,
I
I
can
need
tell
to-
you,
I
my
need to go
knowledge
ahead
of
and ask you to-
concrete, it would be much less.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Charlie Davis.
Hello. If y'all don't know, that is my father. And if y'all know the Davis name, I am going to be passionate about this because he is a lawyer and it runs in the blood. But obviously, I am a Radford High School student. I've been going to Radford High School my whole life. I've gone to the elementary. I played on the Norman G. Lindenberg field my whole life. Played my championship in the rec league, played my playoff games there, won 2 Super Bowls there. I mean, my dad was coaching me there, and it's just, I've been on this field my whole life, and I can't imagine playing my senior year not on that field. So, I mean, of course, senior year loss for me, my teammates who were behind me, all these big things, but the fact of just being on the field and being on with the concrete just adds just to the Norman G. Lindenberg field of just embracing that, because at Christiansburg, it's a lot nicer there and has turf, so the metal kind of flows with it. But metal with the Radford Stadium in a kind of the dome, I guess, it doesn't flow for me at least. But I'm against the concrete. I mean the metal. Some main cons that I saw if we have our games at Christiansburg, we lose home field advantage. The band would have to travel every single time. We lose a lot of revenue because of are we going to do concessions there? Are we going to charge admission and we get the money? Are we going to send it back to the people that we rented to? The travel risk for students, just because if we go to Blacksburg or Christiansburg, are we expecting to have a spirit bus every single home game, or are we going to expect for the students to drive? And students can sometimes be bad drivers, so that might not be the best case if they drive all the way there, which could cause more incidents. School spirit, that's a big one. Just not having just you go to the library, and a lot of kids just hang out at the library after school, wait a few hours, and go up to the field. And I just love that. But having the game somewhere else, just it would cause a lot of just school spirit just to go down, and community spirit. Community spirit would just there would be some fans that would come and join, but a lot of them are just not on the Bobcat field. I'm not going to go and support. But those are the main, just big reasons of having concrete is it just adds just to the factor of just being a Bobcat. Just my dad played there, my uncles played there, I've had friends that played there. I mean, it's been in my black and gold blood. I just can't imagine not playing on that field and just being somewhere else. So I would prefer just to back it up a little bit and maybe just, I mean, it'd be I don't know, because of course I am just a student. I don't know all the aspect of it, but just figuring out some way that we can just keep the home field advantage and keep just the fact of playing on Norman G. Lindenberg Field, because going somewhere else just wouldn't feel right. So metal is slippery. It's just not a go-to for me, at least. But that's all I really have to say. But I thank y'all for having me.
Thank you very much. All right, now we have Charlie Cosmato.
I'll time myself because I've spent my whole adult career in education, and we just love to talk. There we go. Am I the last person?
No, we've got 2 more after you.
Oh, thank goodness. I spent also my entire career trying not to get between people in the door in the long meetings. Remember, it was me that helped me. I'm not a native Bobcat, and I've had numerous people tell me that if you're not a native, you actually are always a come lately. I came to Radford in 1989. I escaped Coach Jeff Highfield, Terriers in Benton. I did not play football for him. I did play soccer for him. I was the rear tackle on his soccer team. He was a football coach. There was no such thing as rear tackle. People don't know soccer. But he was a football coach. I spent a lot of time running up and down the concrete bleachers in Benton. A lot. I have no love for concrete. I understand this community loves it a lot. I actually hate concrete. I'd rather run the swamps of Berkeley Bottom for 4 hours. And by the way, I did do that for Coach Highfield. I would be against, if you couldn't have what he did to us. That'd be against all sorts of regulations. But what I see here is not a choice between concrete and metal. I feel that the argument's been framed rather oddly. You've got a choice between a little bit of concrete and a lot of metal, or a lot of concrete and a little bit of metal. And either way, your butt's going to be sitting on metal. Unless you're willing to go a lot higher than $2 or $3 million and put in those nice seat backs. Now, in 1967, somebody thought investing in infrastructure was a good idea because they built a mighty fine stadium for 1967. They spent money and they said it's okay to spend money, not just on education, but what at the time was regarded as extracurricular activities. Now, I was originally educated as a health educator. We spent a lot of time telling people that participation in sports is, in fact, a vital part of a person's development as a whole well person. And the opportunity to do so, either as an athlete or a fan, actually enhances the academic experience. So kudos to the board for even taking on this kind of a moonshot project. We've heard from experts tonight that this stadium is at the end of its surface, its life. So maybe one option is to put 2 inches of concrete on it so you can maintain what's culturally valuable here, concrete. I think y'all are weird for that. I hate concrete. But I understand. That is a culture that I don't get to talk to. I can only be part of it as best I can. But don't skimp and give yourself just a little bit more life. If you want concrete, be bold. Ask your board to spend the money. The extra $1 million, probably more, because let's face it, once you build this, you're going to have all the unintended side effects of having to make every single other thing come up to speed. I know it's out of vogue. Some of you are going to face a really hard time for spending any money. That's just the way people do. We don't like to spend money. But I just recently was involved in a project in Roanoke where we recalked the city parking garage. It's about 10,000 linear feet of concrete caulk, $15 per linear foot. I'm guessing that one of the reasons your stadium is falling apart is because that caulk, and those pictures didn't look good, has been failing and has either never been replaced or it gets patched over. But digging it out and replacing it is expensive, and that's a long-term maintenance cost that the city will have to say, we are willing to pay annual maintenance costs on this structure in perpetuity. Or, in a few years, come back, tear it down, and build it again. That's what I wanted to mention being in higher education. Still got 45 seconds. Public does not like to spend money maintaining educational facilities. They like to tear down and rebuild. So if you're going to do it, go the whole hog and build something that will last a long time. Whether it's concrete with aluminum on it, or a little bit of concrete with a lot of aluminum on it. That's all I have to say. Thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you very much. You did it. Thank you very much. All right, next we have Dwayne Martin.
My name is Dwayne Martin, 802 Dundee Drive. I am the wrestling coach at Radford High School. 2 things that I'm concerned about, and it's all about timing. The timing of the sports seasons and making sure that our sports are allowed to be happening and not be put off by construction. I heard some people saying that phasing plans should not be decided tonight, and it doesn't have to be decided tonight, but I really want you all to consider tonight about the timing. I see no reason why we cannot do the visitor stands first.
Thank you very much. All right, and we have Mandy Thompson.
My name is Mandy Thompson, 1305 4th Street, and you have all received a message from me. I just kind of feel like the whole community was blindsided. I understand that this is a school project, but that stadium isn't just a school project. It's a community. Everybody knows it's Norman Lindenberg Stadium. And one of the things that I think about was, did anybody speak to him? Did anybody speak to his family to ask their opinion? This is named after him, this whole stadium is. He should have been some sort of deciding factor in this. I, as you know, do not like metal bleachers. I think they're cheap. I do not think they're going to last as long as concrete. That's my opinion. I'm not an expert. But the next thing I want to talk about is these kids back here have been through enough in the last 4 years with COVID. They had to play their football season in February. Don't take that away from them. They've been through enough. Even if we get metal bleachers at this point, my child is what's most important to me. So even if we decide to get metal bleachers, please do not start this until after this football season. And I thank you for telling us that this can happen, because I even sent Rob a personal email, please just let these boys play. I don't care if we have to sit on one side of the field, please just let them play on Norman G. Lindenberg Field. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all public comments we had listed. So now it's time. Is there anybody else who didn't sign up who wanted to speak? You're welcome to. No? Okay. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate, all of the correspondence we've had, all of y'all willing to sit through this meeting and hear these presentations, everybody who's gotten up and willing to give their comments. I suppose it's time for us to have a discussion about it. Yeah? So.
I do want to say something.
Sure.
My name is Darren Clark. I live at 813 9th Street. Lane and Clark's dad. We actually moved from Glenver up here for Radford because of the sports. My biggest thing that I saw when we moved here, Landon didn't play football when we first moved up here, and then he decided to play football. But when Coach Chris got here, not saying anything about any other coaches, I don't know the history. So when Coach Chris got there, I remember we went to the first scrimmage. and it was loaded. There was people everywhere, you know, and that's what you all want. That's what we all want because we make concessions. It pays for so many other things. The only thing that scares me of delaying and moving over to the visitor side, you're going to have normal people that don't even have kids out there, don't even have grandkids. They still come to the game because of the community. That's what scares me, is because I know my son is very passionate, but when he has screaming fans, he's that much better on the field, and it makes everybody else better. So just like the guy said with the bleachers, you know, he still remembers his high school days. I remember my high school football days. I'll never forget them. You know, and the first thing Landon was saying, Dad, we're not going to be able to play. You know, they've already had COVID. They've had, you know, we might have to go to different fields. I hope that doesn't happen. But I really hope you all could just get it to where we could get this season, have these kids at home field, and not take it from Coach Chris of what he's done to get these stands packed. I mean, they're packed. And I think, you know, a lot of that is to do with Coach Chris and what he's building there. So I appreciate you letting me talk. That's my opinion, but I think it could go a long way. So.
Great, thank you so much. All right. Cancel all that. So, where are we? Anybody want to lead us off? Or have any questions, any further questions from Jack that have come up since public comments?
I've never been bashful, even whenever I was sitting out in the audience, or long before that. So Jenny, I'll lead off if you don't mind.
Sure.
First off, Jack, thank you for coming out and fielding a lot of questions directed at you and not, frankly. Appreciate that. Rob, thank you for working on this as well and preparing a lot that we really didn't think about previously as a board, regardless of who sits on it. You know, there's a lot that involved there. A lot of communications going on recently. More of a comment than a question. I think from my understanding at this point, there's several other costs and ideas that we were waiting to get some feedback on, that we were unclear about. I am not comfortable moving forward at this point with an affirmative vote, not knowing all those other expenditures, the costs, you know, to the point of there's too much uncertainty there. And I don't feel like it was addressed. And there's also, I think, in November, I sat out in the audience. I had questions I couldn't ask. I think we've addressed a lot of those tonight. You know, I think we have found some opportunities for solutions for timing, which addresses a lot of concerns. But I still have questions about costs that Jack was going to work on and get back to us. And Chris had mentioned some photos he was going to send over to us and things of that nature. I think it would be premature. You know, if our question is, do we vote to approve this tonight? My opinion is I think we're premature to do that. There's other things we need to consider.
Okay.
I pretty much came into this just with the kids on my mind. I didn't want the kids to be deprived of playing on their home field. And that's still my top priority. I'm class of 72 Bobcat, but I'm sorry, the concrete bleachers are not a sticking point for me, but this isn't about me because I represent you. And so that is why I'm having some, I'm concerned. I'm sorry that this wasn't on anyone's radar as it was being considered. I pledge that I will try to make sure things are on your radar as they come up. But I'm with Chris. I'm not ready to pull the trigger, so to speak. And I really wish we could investigate Mr. Davis's two sources to determine whether they're viable. The additional concrete over the existing structure and consulting these two sources that are these two professionals that he put forward. That's where I am.
Okay.
again, this missing information, whether we go concrete or metal, and the whole timing to make it viable for this season. What's it going to cost us to be able to use the stadium, the repairs, the things that have to be done, that then that's money we've spent, $50,000, I heard somewhere,
That was
maybe.
that was a talk.
We don't know, hanging out there. Maybe in the big scheme of things, $50,000 isn't a lot of money, but in my budget it is. And then to come back and maybe undo or tear some of that out. Have we been good stewards of our money while at the same time being attentive to our students and their needs? We trying to figure out that balance, but I don't think I have numbers to figure that out right now.
Okay. Dr. Ray?
Yeah, I need to know the cost to repair the stadium, to be honest.
Mhm.
The temporary repair,
Yeah.
that's where I'm at. All of I voted for the aluminum. I stand behind my vote, but I can be convinced otherwise on pretty much anything in life. And very convincing arguments tonight, and I appreciate that. Made me think a lot about some things. You know, the 2 inches of concrete, I don't know if that can be done or not. Jack, I don't think you said whether it could or not. I don't know if it's the right thing or not. So I'm with you. I think I need more information before I could say yes. I need to know the timeline. I hear that we don't need to worry about that now. I think that may not be the exact wording, but I mean, we're here for the kids, so I think we do need to worry about that and have a plan in place. Now I'll back up a little bit and say that we do need to make a decision, or that plan can't be in place.
Right.
So
right.
it's
are on a.
It's give and take. So I
Yeah.
get that, but I don't want to wait too long because the cost of materials does go up and down. But we meet again in what, 2 weeks? When's our next meeting?
14th.
Yeah, 14th.
Did Chris?
That's
did
not
Chris have a sort of deadline for a decision needing to be made? Do we?
He just said soon, from what
I
I
mean,
heard.
he said sooner rather than later, and of
Yeah.
course, anybody committing to that kind of work would rather know it as quickly as they could. But I'm sure there is a point at which he would say, "I'm sorry,
Yeah.
you know, I made the offer in good faith, and I can't hold it forever."
And that's an unknown too. Do we have 2 weeks? Do we have a month? Do we have 1 day? So, and I don't think the price of metal would go up $100,000 in 2 weeks. I would hope not. So
These days
it
you never know.
It
Look
could.
at
All right,
eggs.
I'll retract that.
Yeah, you don't know.
I can tell you from
I
the
have seen
commercial,
what eggs have
it
done
can.
over the past few years, so I understand. Yeah. But I'm with you guys. I think there are some unknowns that I'm not comfortable, and I'm not comfortable voting tonight.
Okay. I also would like to, get the numbers for, repairing. My concern with what material we end up, definitely deciding to use is making sure that our students are on the field, on our field, not on anybody else's field, that's
Whether it's
that's
going
priority.
or not.
gotta
Like
be
for
home.
me, that's not a question, and never was a question. That's our goal, is to have safe stadium for our fans and parents, grandparents, little brothers and sisters to be able to go to, so that nobody's gonna get injured. But keeping our kids on the field, keeping our band in the stadium, that's the other priority. And it, from what I hear from the proposal tonight, was there is flexibility for sure with this company, that they are going to be able to work around our schedule, whatever we decide. If we want to, fix the visitor side first and everybody comes sits on home side, and then as soon as that's done, the season is done, we get that done, that sounds great. If we want to wait until the end of the season and do some patches, that's a cost we need to know. I don't foresee moving the home side over to the visitor side. I don't know that really makes sense with all the extra costs that would incur as well. But in any case, I think the concern of our kids not being able to be on the field is not a concern if we go with the metal bleachers, for sure. Because we don't have a proposal on the table from a concrete company, we don't know if that schedule would make it so that our students could be on the field. We just don't know. And I don't like that uncertainty. And I don't know how long, it would take to get that kind of a proposal. But all the other risks mentioned, would they destroy the sort of box that the whole stadium goes in? Would it put at risk the press box? All the other possible risks of, fixing it with concrete.
Which would then change the field.
Yeah. So, that's my concern with wanting to go with, fully replacing the concrete. I also don't like the idea of putting a Band-Aid on it, if the 2-inch of concrete poured on top, and that's something that, one of these folks might be able to answer, that Mr. Davis suggested. If that's not, if we're just gonna have to replace it again in a couple of years, we're just gonna be sitting right back here with less money in the pot to be able to do, a stadium to the level that our players should be playing in. So I want to be a good steward of the money as well, and I'm concerned that if we, try to do a fix-it to keep it how it's been, that we're not actually doing good service to our future Bobcats. Because I don't want to be here in 5-10 years and, have to fix this all over again. So for me, and again, concrete or metal, that's not something that's, part of my heritage to care about as much as many in this room and many watching at home. For me, it's the cost is prohibitive to do concrete. It's at least $500,000 more, from these, estimates that we've been given. That's a lot of money that we could be doing so much for our schools, is where I feel like I am.
Oh, I agree. Total replacement of concrete, yeah, I don't think that is, yeah, that would not be fiscally responsible.
And so, I hear everybody's, very strong and very heartfelt feelings about, changing a stadium that has been, an established piece of Radford history for a very, very long time. And I understand that, change is never fun, but I want to do something that's fiscally responsible for now and for long term. I want to do something that is ADA compliant so all of our fans can come and watch safely. I want to make sure our students are on the field this season and every season. So those are the things that I'm thinking about. I would like to know cost for, doing some minor repairs or what we would need to do to section off. If I guess there's some things that we would have to fix no matter what, and some things that we could section off possibly. So I would want to know those costs before we, move forward and make a plan either with this company or otherwise.
And I would just like, maybe I misunderstood the communication, but I thought the plan was to repair them temporarily and let visitors sit on the home side. So when it was said tonight that the home crowd would go to the visitor side, it caught me way off guard.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't ready for that.
That was one of the options.
That was just an option.
So
a
I think that list
possibility.
is all possibilities.
I understand,
Yeah.
but I guess I was
wasn't
under the
expecting that either.
Okay, I was under the impression that the option was to repair it, the top option, temporary repair,
Patch it and then use
and
it for the
move
season.
visitors to the home side. And to me, that we saved our football season and
Yeah.
all of that. Because I'm with you on the concrete versus aluminum. I think I'm not convinced concrete is fiscally responsible to do. But again, I can be convinced. But it caught me off guard to say that and then not know the cost of the repair, the temporary repair. So that's why I'm where I am.
Mm-hmm.
That one unknown, I think, is the biggest thing for me.
I've looked around and I'm the oldest person here. I'm class of '67. My name is Eddie Rader. I never got to play on this field because I had to play all my games on the road. And that is no fun, believe me. I played 3 home games in Christiansburg on the old field and 2 home games at Dublin on their field. We played Dublin at Dublin, and it was our home game. And you had to jump on a 1957 GMC bus and make that trip. So that should be off the table. You do not want the kids to do that. We still ended up 7-3. But I'm a graduate of Bluefield College, and I'm on the advisory council to the president at Bluefield University. We lease Mitchell Stadium. Mitchell Stadium was constructed 87 years ago, and it's concrete, and nothing has been replaced because it's been maintained. And you can't go in and do any demo on it because it's on the historic
Register now.
of historical structures. So you have to be real careful what you're doing. It's maintained and has a good surface look, and we don't have an issue with that.
But obviously it hadn't been maintained.
And I've still I haven't heard anything about metal fatigue. And metal will fail. That's why we're replacing bridges over here. And aluminum will fail somewhere along the line. I'm not making fun of it, but that's just a fact. It will fail. It's exposed to extreme heat, extreme cold, vibrations, kids jumping up and down, and it eventually will fail. But, you know, it's something that equates into this. But the idea of kids having to play on the road, it should not be on the table. Because I've done it, and it's no fun. Actually, I was there and they threw a smoke bomb at us at Dublin, so that's the things you have to go through. But I just wanted to interject and bring that point out.
Thank you.
But, you know, and you can talk with the people at Mitchell what they do to maintain their concrete. And like I say, the thing is 87 years old. And it is in perfect condition. The only thing's been added is blue seat, and that's it.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
It's something you can inquire, and, because you need to do some research.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Jenny, if I may, to Mr. Ricker's point, and I promise I'll say this and stop. I'll do my best anyway. What I heard a couple times, Jack, and correct me if I'm wrong, with Chris's presentation and with others, there was surprise with our concrete stadium being as young as it was that it needed to have as much repair as it has done to it. I believe I got that correct.
Particularly within, what, from 68 to 85?
Yes, within a certain timeline. It sounds like to me, and certainly based on Mr. Ricker's comments and others that I've looked at, it may be an issue of the mixture of the concrete that was used initially. You know, far be it from me to find fault in something that is faultless in many opinions, and maybe so after time. But it sounds like to me that the issue was with perhaps the material or the implementation of that material at that time. Things have changed. So, you know, I think we all agree completely that we're missing some information on some cost to cure regarding the temporary repairs or whatever the case may be there to make sure we utilize the field. I don't know of anyone who is proposing that we take our team on the road unnecessarily. I'm certainly 100% against it, but I also have some personal interest in that, and 2 of them are sitting right out here in the audience tonight. They've earned the right, and my family's earned the right to be out there along with some of our others to walk on that field as seniors where they play on that field and they perform in that field. We don't want to take that from anybody. I certainly won't. It's unbelievable that we would even consider that, to me. But I am curious, and Jack, I don't know if you can speak to this directly, if we need to research it more, along with the cost to cure of the issues there. What would be, in an ideal circumstance, what would be the life expectancy of a 2-inch cap and the timeline along with that? And Rob, that may be a question better for you, and I apologize, I don't mean to leave you out of that, but you know, I'm not sure which way to direct that question. You know, if we're shocked that our concrete has degraded so much in a short period of time, would we really, you know, if we're talking about it in a 25-year span, we're shocked that it didn't last longer than that. We're not talking about 5 years or so that we're expecting to have to replace it. We're expecting, you know, 25, maybe 30 years since the last patches that we're replacing now need to be repaired. Because that was done in the mid-90s. We're 2023 now. So we're looking at 30 years, almost 28 years down the road for a patch to be repaired. 2-inch cap of concrete on top of that, that is not a small amount of concrete. And I've done minor work at my house whenever I'm allowed, but it's not a small thing. It's not a small expense, and it's not a small task, but it's going to last a good while. But
Jack,
a good while
Jack,
as a banker
are you
is.
able to speak to that? Okay, let's let Jack.
Please, thank you.
I'd like to address a few other things too, I heard, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
First of all, and is it on?
Jack, you've been up there enough to know Stacy's going to tackle you if you don't.
All right.
He stands up, we're all in trouble.
Got to watch out for me. Just, they won't have to follow me out to the car to get it back from. First of all, the 2-inch concrete and something that Richie had mentioned. We work with Travis Eccles all the time. We took Travis out there to see the problems that we had and get some suggestions from him. He said on site with us, you would spend way more money trying to repair this than if you just let me put 2 inches concrete over top of this whole thing. Those are Travis's words. And we said, okay, that's gonna weigh a lot, right? How much does concrete weigh? You know, every poor section of concrete is just this big, it weighs a lot. And I'm not prepared to say that the structure that's there can support that. So we said, at a minimum, let's cut this open. That was Travis's initial idea. He's the one who cut it open for us, okay? We wanted to see what was under there, what was being supported. There was no drawings available on the stadium. We just found some apparently in a drawer yesterday or something.
Storage office.
There are some, they're not complete, but there are some there. And our estimate, and you heard me say this back in November, was the
40.
We estimated that it was supported by these stringers, similar to stairs, and that it was in a foundation at the top and the bottom. Well, the drawings I just saw, they're showing an intermediate foundation. On the visitor side, they're showing a foundation that goes down 16 feet on the back because it's mostly fill material. So again, I wasn't prepared to say we can put all that concrete on top of what's there now, which is already crumbling and falling apart, because I don't know what's going to hold it. I didn't know what was underneath it. Then, keep this in mind, all those other associated costs when we go the precast route. I'm going to make an aside here too. I am not picking one side or the other, okay? My job as your professional is to present the data and let you decide. I don't have a dog in this hunt. I don't, Chris is a nice guy. I don't really know him. I'm not trying to sell his product. When the decision was made in November, it was due to schedule and longevity. Those were the two things that were discussed. And maybe it was premature because we all wanted to get something done right away. That was the only thing that I was presenting at that time. And as I said tonight, I showed the costs were pretty similar, but the schedule and longevity were something that the aluminum could pretty much support. But back on the two inch, same with the precast, we're going to have to remove everything. We're going to have to bring it up to current code as soon as you do that. We're going to have to add handrails and stairs and everything else. So it's not just the cost of that, okay? I would love to see an exact replica of what was there before. It's beautiful. I said that. I love it. It's a gem in Southwest Virginia. I am not a proponent of one or the other. You want to know what was the quickest way to get this thing done, and that was the information that I presented. My company worked on Mitchell Stadium several times. It's been repaired several times. Patching, it's constructed differently than this, okay? I didn't personally work on it, but I'm aware of it. We've worked on it. And he's absolutely right. If we're not going to maintain things, everything's going to go bad, just like our own health, right? So that is a necessary component of anything, any facilities that you own. And I think over time, and the board faces this every day, we're dealing with a lot of Band-Aids, one after another. And I mean, that's not your fault. It's limiting budgets and so forth. So we've looked into the 2-inch. We didn't go really far with it because the time frame, all the other added things that were going to happen. And I told you there are high level costs on going with the precast. Didn't say we couldn't do it. It's an option. I can guarantee this. It will take longer than the other one, okay? And we will need to set aside a significant longer period, whether it means you have no bleachers during the soccer, track and field season, or I don't know the overall schedule, but it will take longer than what was proposed tonight. That's all I can say about that. It will definitely take longer.
Well, Jack, you also, we did have a special structural engineer come in from Wise to look at, to see.
Our lead,
and he was uncomfortable with putting that weight on the current bleachers.
He's the COO of our company. He's a civil and structural engineer, concentration in structural engineering. You know, he's 35 years in business, and I'm relying on these guys every day. I'm a dumb architect. These guys know what they're talking about.
I don't know that. That's what I was told.
The 2-inch part, we kind of moved on from that, Richie, but I do have a copy of our report. You're welcome to it.
Can that be shared, the structural engineering part of it? I mean, I know you've sent this for this thing, but I'm just wondering if that's work product or you
Rob has a copy of it. It's available. There's nothing to hide from it. It's a lot of what I presented, all the observations and recommendations. The very same photos that I've been showing you are attached to that as well. But again, I mean, I have an ethical responsibility to present data and let you make the decision based on what you asked me to do. So I think as far as the phasing goes, we were asked, is there other things we can do? Because nobody wants to mess up this season. Yeah. I certainly don't want anyone pointing at me for that, right? So here's a bunch of options. Some of them are wacky. They don't make any sense. But the best thing I heard tonight is he said, you don't have to do any of those. I'll do it after the season and keep the same price. That sounds like well worth it to me, even though there'll be some interim fixes, because again, I'm not promoting that system, but if you don't take that contract, look at the difference in the bids that we got between the second and third, and they were both, right around almost $2 million, I think, right? So, how long he's willing to hold that price, you know what materials can do, and he said that he got it at a good time. So, $30,000 to $50,000 to do these interim things, you might spend 3, 4, 5 times that if you wait a little bit longer. And that's not a threat or a scare. Just be aware of those things. That's what happens. So we have looked into all these things. It's pretty difficult to present. I mean, I've been here 3 hours tonight. I've done it 2 hours, two other times. I can't tell you every single thing that we've done and every piece of paper and every stone that we got. It's hard to even remember the order because several things are happening at one time. But we don't have a preconceived agenda or direction. I've been trying to respond to the requests, and I won't disagree that maybe it was premature or a rash decision in November, but it was based on schedule and longevity, and we saw 2 prices that were the same. I wasn't saying one or the other. I'm showing tonight it's significantly different. But that's when that decision was made back in November.
And just so you all have all the information that you need to as far as money goes, because Jack doesn't know what the school's money is, and Carrie helped me here if I get this wrong, but we couldn't afford the other 2 proposals anyway, to be real frank with you, and there's no way with the cost estimate that we could afford the concrete proposal if that is an appropriate proposal, or not the proposal, but the cost comparison. We are, if you all decide to go with the metal proposal that Chris had, we're not going to be able to do a whole much more locally. We have a little over $1 million left in our capital reserve fund with the city. We have $1.7 million in state aid for infrastructure that we're planning to use for that. You can see we're gonna have to get about another 300 out of our reserve fund, which is gonna take it down to about $700,000. We have a $400,000 debt service. We will never have been as low as we will once, if you choose to do this project. We're gonna have to ask what the city has asked of us to come to them if we have a big project in need. And you need to remember, we are doing science rooms with ESSER funds, and I think everything right now, and we know this from the McCard project, everything is way over what it's coming in as. The McCard project was about $1 million over what it was initially, what we initially thought it was going to be. So we have the science rooms. We've already have a contract with Thompson Litton. We have a contract with Thompson Litton for our gym and locker rooms. And who knows what else that we're going to have to do too. We have an why it's so hot in here, and I apologize, you all. The air conditioning's broken for like the third time. We're going to have to do something about that in here. So the money is, and I don't know if you've been reading the news, but the state came out with a capital era.
No.
Yeah.
That's going to impact us unless our General Assembly agrees to go into some of the surplus. I heard a superintendent say go into the rainy day fund because it's pouring rain, and help us not have that, because next year, Carrie, that's $74,000 that we could potentially lose, right? And we don't know what else could come to us from the state. But we're in the biennium right now, and we're not going to get any more infrastructure money until the next biennium, if we do get that. So I think we have to be really, really. I'm here to try to keep us fiscally responsible, and I know how I'm an '87 graduate of Radford, so I understand the pride. But we also, you charge me with making sure, and Gary too, with making sure that we do what's right by our division, so we help all children. I love the seniors. I mean, I love, one of my favorite things to do is do a graduation speech. But I think we have to be careful about what we're spending too. I have a senior right now and a nephew who's a senior, so that's important to me as well. I understand where they are, but the money is concerning.
Rob, I appreciate that, and at the end of it, Jack, first off, thank you, because bless your heart, you're standing up there in the hot seat, and you've been a champ about it. But I somehow had missed the information that the structural engineer came out and looked at it and said, we don't feel like it would support the additional weight. I'll go back and review my notes and look at that and see where I missed that. But I appreciate.
I don't know if I
sharing
said
with
that in a public meeting. Like I said,
again, it's hard to remember
there
everything.
was a lot
said.
of things being considered.
There's a lot. I come out of here with a legal pad full every time because I'm old. That's what I do. But I appreciate that information. That is kind of a game changer, 100%. Because if a professional is saying it won't support this, I'm a banker. I'm not a structural engineer. I went to school, but not for that. I do think it would be responsible if we can provide that as support to others if requested. Mr. Davis's request I think is reasonable and very polite, frankly. I think there's others that have that question. What can we do? I still have the question, the nagging, burning question of what's it going to cost us to patch the thing. Rob, honestly, it's kind of opened up another box whenever we were talking there, because the banker hair in the back of my neck stood up and has been for the last, since that announcement came out. Are we doing the right thing here, period? Hearing a statement of our money is going to be lower than it ever has been.
I just don't know if you.
That scares the heck out of me. No, it scares the heck out of me. I just don't know if we're going to. We have the money right now, the 1.9 we have. We just need to realize that we're not going to have as much as we have had. But I worry that we won't have that money in the future. To especially if we wait to, like if Chris said, the price is going to go up. I mean, he pretty much guaranteed us, and we saw that. What did metal go up with the McCard?
Oh yeah,
it was
we were
a lot.
it was 5 times. We're not talking about a couple percent. 5 times.
We also, like Ms. Boyd said, we have to worry about our future Bobcats too.
Yeah, and my concern is along all those lines. Ultimately, what if my role responsibility professionally is what if planning for those contingencies and making opportunities to overrun them. financially. What if we have cost overruns on this, and we're going to have cost to cure and things like that come along with these contracts. What if we have them with the other projects at the high school, and we're going to?
The trend is.
Yeah, we're going to. I can tell you, construction projects from Florida to Northern Maryland at this point in time that I'm aware of personally, none of them are coming in under budget.
No,
not even close.
Well, and let me remind you too that the projects that we have with the high school locker room and gym and science rooms are ESSER monies.
Yes.
And Ellen will tell you the ESSER monies are running out.
Yes.
And I don't hear anything from the General Assembly about getting even more ESSER monies. I do hear a little bit about there's a bill out there to maybe get some reimbursement from the McCard project, which would help us a ton.
Oh, sure.
But I don't know if that'll pass.
But it still scares me because
And retention
the
rate.
opportunity of if we have something that comes up, what I heard was if we have something come up, we'll have to do what we had said we were going to before and go to the council.
We're gonna have to go to the council.
I
right?
have to be honest, I listen to the council meetings. I don't attend them because of work schedule, but I do listen to them, and I don't know that that's really a viable option either. I think the well's kind of running low there too.
We're all in the
They are
same.
struggling.
Yeah, I mean,
but that is what they communicated to us, that if we come to a point where we have a need, we are to go to them. That's what we were told.
So some of the depletion of that was to help with McCard. I mean,
Yeah.
we used a lot of school funds in addition to the the money that we had from the city. We used a lot of our money, a lot of our carry forward capital reserves money to help finish that project.
Yeah.
So, with us not knowing how much repair costs would be, regardless, we have to do repairs. Yeah? I mean,
If you're
unless
gonna-
we
if
were.
you're gonna use the stadium.
If we're gonna use the stadium, which we're gonna use the
Signed
stadium.
off by the school board
Now
attorney
that we're aware of it,
Right.
we have to, yeah.
So,
You have to.
if we have to do it, we have to do it, not regardless of cost, but, can we make a motion to move forward with the repairs pending
I think
cost?
we ought to see what we get in before you do that.
Okay,
I think
okay.
we
I just
oughta-
didn't know if
I
we
don't
need,
know
I just didn't know if that
I
needed to
how
happen
much
for him
money.
to get us
I
a
think we oughta
number.
see what.
I mean, I want a ballpark,
Jack's
an accurate
really good
ballpark.
about making good estimates of what he feels we have, but we need to get a firm number of what that would be.
So, timeline on being able to get those figures?
Probably by middle of next week, end of
So
next week.
before our February 14th meeting?
I think
So
so.
could we plan to address that meeting and hopefully move forward on that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, if that works for you, I can't do that.
Yeah,
I mean, we
yeah,
have to- we
but
have
I
to
mean,
rely on them
that's what I'm
to
saying,
do
if
that.
he's
get the
able to
numbers.
present that to us,
Thompson Litton can do that for us.
right?
In less than 3
You
hours.
have to talk to my wife. Is
I
what I'm
was
trying
gonna
to say.
say,
Yeah.
less than 3 hours. The other
He-
thing, can you see if he can hold his price for 2 weeks?
I'll definitely
Yeah,
ask him that.
because
I
if
mean,
so, I think that gives us
I mean,
enough time to get all
you
these other.
understand his perspective, right?
Of
I do.
course.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
trying, he's trying to close the deal here tonight.
He's trying to
and I
close the deal,
understand.
but he also understands ours.
That's
He's
right.
heard.
And I think it's very generous that he said, I can make this work after the season, because he understands, and
Yeah.
that was
Or
music
in
to my
or in
ear.
phases too.
Or in
I mean,
phases during the
when
season
When I
is-
talked to him the
yeah.
other day, and he said, "I won't charge you to do it in phases," that's a shock.
That,
because most
that's
people do.
more surprising to me, because you'd have to mobilize the drill rigs for the caissons and then take them off. And then you gotta bring them back again later. So that's more surprising than just delaying everything till after the season. So, but they're all out there, and I think it's a no-brainer to forget all those phasing things and just plan on doing
Just
that.
wait and do it.
But if you're gonna use the stadium, you gotta do these things.
Gotcha.
Home and visitor
The
bleachers.
visitor side is significantly less problematic.
Damaged.
But
Yeah.
still needs.
And
Significantly less, but there's still something that
yeah,
can be cured.
there is some. And it's primarily where I think we got to do the most repairs, or the aisleways and the stairs, right? That's where people are communicating. The other we'll do on a case-by-case basis, and I'd probably be the most cost-effective thing to just, let's rope those areas off, okay? Let's keep people out of it and save, a couple $1,000s or a hole here or what have you,
Right.
because I go to games. I haven't seen that stadium sold out in years. Despite how good the team's doing and all that, there is some excess seating there right now. And I would encourage you too, if that concern of the raise in the back, maybe there's a halfway point. We only have a little bit of a raise and we don't lose 4 rows, we lose 2. I mean, that's an option too to think about. And I think because this is a proposal, not a fixed bid, that you have that latitude to do that.
I have to say this, I'm really concerned about ripping things off. I don't know if y'all been in, I know you all, most of you probably.
You go
been to the
places,
game,
people
but,
go under the ropes.
I mean, well, and the administration at Radford High School will tell you, sometimes people will just drop their children off, and there's no supervision. So there's children all over the place, and I would be so worried that they'd go in one of those areas, and even though it's ripped off, like you said, Jane, I mean,
They go
you know,
under.
they get hurt, and we know about it. Even though we roped it off, I'm not sure that
Would be
Rodney
enough.
would feel comfortable with that at all.
I mean, because I've been there as well, and
Yeah,
I've
you've
seen it.
seen
I mean, we've, as band parents, we've all caught the little ones toddling around everywhere. My curiosity would be, is it possible, and I mean, I've seen this in other locations, municipalities, et cetera, to even, you know, use a plate, whether it's, you know, metal plating is industrial and you typically used
Well, that's
for
what we
high
have there
traffic
right
areas.
now, where the hole was cut.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe something like that, or
Smaller
even if,
scale,
you know,
right.
something smaller with that. You
I
know.
think we'd have to make sure that there's absolutely no access.
Yeah.
For.
Well,
anybody
that's,
to get
you know, I'm not
into
talking
that.
about just leaving it loose. I mean, if we even do concrete anchors
Yeah, I
into
think
it
we
and
could
secure
do
it,
that. That would probably be the extent of the fix that
Yeah.
I would propose on the
and
flat area.
that's my. I mean, I don't just throwing it out there. That'd be my thought with what I've seen in other locations.
Okay.
To absolutely mitigate our liability there, you know, keep our little bobcats as safe as we can, because you know we love our little cats too.
All right.
I can appreciate it. I was a band parent for 6 years, so we were very involved, and I have a son who's a senior and will be playing soccer there in the spring, and I share all these concerns, I really do. But I thought it was good news to hear that we can push it off and it won't cost you any more.
All right, well, we have been here a very long time, and we really appreciate all the work that you've done. I think it sounds as though we're not prepared to move forward this evening, but by our next meeting, to have, hopefully be able to have some numbers, you know, and an idea from you all on how to mitigate the.
Continue to look at those other numbers, those couple that I had asterisks on that was kind of, you know, just our internal, and see if I can better identify those. And I mean, they weren't the big number, but every penny counts, right? So they're more than the cost for the intermediate or interim fixes. So.
Okay, and if you can ask Chris, you know, how long that proposal is
I'll do that.
good for.
I'm sure if I don't have a message from him right now, I'll be talking to him in the morning. So. Anyway, thank you all.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you very much. All right, do we need to go into closed session? No. Okay. All right, I think we can, if I have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Have a second? Any? Are we all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you all so much for coming this evening. Thank you, everybody.